Hello, friends. Did you know nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy these stories, please hit that subscribe button and leave a like. It really helps. Thank you for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. The September heat was merciless on Route 66 that night, even at 2 in the morning. Clyde Hutchinson had been driving his 18-wheeler for the better part of 23 years, and in all that time, he'd learned to trust his gut. Tonight, his gut was telling him something was wrong, even before he saw the flashing hazard lights up ahead on the shoulder. He was hauling a full load of electronics from California to Chicago, making good time through the Arizona stretch of the old highway. Most truckers preferred the interstate these days, but Clyde had always been partial to Route 66. Less traffic meant better time, even if the road was rougher in places. The isolation never bothered him much, until tonight. The CB radio crackled to life beside him, breaking through the static that had been his only companion for the last 50 miles. "Breaker, breaker, this is Mabel calling for help. Anyone out there? Please, we need help. There's been an accident." Clyde reached for the handset, his calloused fingers wrapping around the familiar plastic. The woman's voice sounded desperate, frightened. "This is Big Iron. I copy you, Mabel. What's your 20? "Oh, thank God." The voice came back, shaky with relief. "We're at mile marker 147, just past the Hackberry turnoff. My husband, he's hurt real bad. Our car went off the road. Please, can you help us?" Clyde checked his odometer. He was coming up on mile marker 145, just a couple minutes away. He'd already started easing off the accelerator, his foot hovering over the brake. "I'm about 2 miles out, Mabel. Hang tight. You call 911? "I tried, but my phone, it's not working out here. No signal. Please, he's bleeding. I don't know what to do." The hazard lights came into view as Clyde rounded a slight curve. He could see a sedan pulled off on the shoulder, its emergency flashers painting the desert in rhythmic bursts of amber. A figure stood beside it, waving frantically. Even from a distance, he could see it was a woman, her dress pale in his headlights. Clyde brought the Peterbilt to a stop about 30 feet behind the car, engaging his own hazards. He left the engine running, another thing 23 years on the road had taught him. Always leave yourself a quick exit. He grabbed his flashlight from the door pocket and climbed down from the cab. The woman hurried toward him, and in the harsh glare of his truck's headlights, Clyde could see she was maybe 45, 50 years old. Her floral dress was rumpled, and there was something dark on her hands. Blood, maybe. Her face was streaked with tears. "Oh, thank you for stopping," she said, her voice matching the one from the CB. "It's Chester, my husband. We hit something in the road, I think. Maybe a deer? The car spun out and he hit his head on the window." Clyde followed her to the sedan. The passenger side was facing the road and he could see a man slumped in the driver's seat. The spiderweb crack in the side window told part of the story. But something made Clyde pause before getting closer. The damage to the car didn't match what Mabel had described. There were no signs of impact with a deer, no fur or blood on the hood, no dents consistent with hitting a large animal. "Ma'am, we need to call for help," Clyde said, keeping his voice steady. "I've got a phone in my truck that might get better signal." "No, please. Can you just help me get him out first? I'm worried about moving him by myself. What if his neck is hurt?" It was a reasonable concern, but something in the way she said it, the way her eyes kept darting past him toward his truck, set off alarm bells in Clyde's head. He'd been held up once before, about 15 years back, outside of Amarillo. 3 men had tried to get him to stop for a broken-down vehicle. He'd kept driving that time, reported it to the state police. Later found out they'd robbed 2 other truckers that same night. "Let me take a look," Clyde said, but he kept his distance, shining his flashlight through the window. The man inside didn't move, didn't react to the light. Chester, if that was really his name, was completely still. Too still. That's when Clyde noticed the other things that didn't add up. The car's tires. They were all fully inflated, no signs of a blowout. The dust on the shoulder showed no skid marks, no evidence of a vehicle losing control. And now that he was closer, he could see Mabel's hands weren't covered in blood. It was something else, something darker. Dirt, maybe, or old oil. "You know what, ma'am?" Clyde said, taking a step back. "I'm going to call this in from my truck. Get some ambulances out here right away." Mabel's expression changed, just for a second. The desperation flickered, replaced by something harder, calculating. Then the tears were back. "Please, don't leave us. I'm so scared." Clyde was already backing toward his truck when he heard it, the slight squeak of a door hinge. The driver's side door of the sedan, the one facing away from the road, was opening slowly. Chester was moving after all. "Run, Mabel!" Chester's voice was clear, strong, not the voice of an injured man. "He's not buying it!" Clyde turned and ran for his truck. Behind him, he heard Mabel curse, heard Chester's door slam fully open, heard footsteps on gravel. His boots pounded the asphalt as he covered the 30 feet to his cab. His hands shook as he grabbed the door handle, hauled himself up. "Wait!" Mabel called out. "We just need a ride. We're not going to hurt you." But Clyde was already slamming the door, hitting the locks. In his side mirror, he could see Chester now, standing beside the car. The man was holding something in his hand. In the red glow of the truck's taillights, it looked like a tire iron. Clyde threw the truck into gear and pulled away, his heart hammering in his chest. As he accelerated, he grabbed his CB handset, switching to Channel 9, the emergency channel. "Breaker, breaker. This is Big Iron on Route 66 westbound, mile marker 147. Be advised, there's a man and woman running some kind of ambush scam. White sedan, Arizona plates. They're trying to get truckers to stop. Do not stop to help. Repeat, do not stop." Several voices came back immediately, thanking him for the warning. One said he'd relay the information to the state police. Clyde kept driving, checking his mirrors obsessively for the next 10 miles, half expecting to see headlights racing up behind him. But the road remained dark. It wasn't until he reached the truck stop at Seligman that Clyde finally allowed himself to relax. He pulled into the well-lit lot, parking between two other rigs. His hands were still shaking as he climbed down from the cab. Inside the travel center, he bought himself a cup of coffee and found a quiet corner where he could call the Arizona Highway Patrol directly. The dispatcher took his report seriously, especially when he mentioned the CB warnings he'd heard from other truckers. Apparently, there had been similar incidents reported over the past month, always the same stretch of highway, always late at night. The police suspected it was a robbery scheme, maybe worse. 2 truckers had gone missing in the area in the last 6 weeks. "You did the right thing, Mr. Hutchinson," the dispatcher told him. "We've got units heading to that location now." Clyde hung up and sat there in the fluorescent brightness of the truck stop, surrounded by the familiar sounds of other drivers coming and going. He thought about Mabel's desperate voice on the CB, how convincing she'd been. If he hadn't noticed those small details, if his instincts hadn't kicked in, he might have ended up like those missing truckers. He finally understood something that had been nagging at him since he'd driven away. The thing that had bothered him most wasn't the fake accident, or even Chester coming after him with a tire iron. It was the way Mabel had known exactly which channel to call on, had used the right trucker slang. "Breaker, breaker," she'd said. "What's your 20? These weren't amateurs. They'd done their homework, learned how truckers communicate, which meant they'd probably been watching, listening, maybe for weeks, learning their targets' habits, their routes, their vulnerabilities. Clyde finished his coffee and headed back to his truck. He still had a deadline to meet, a load to deliver. But as he pulled back onto Route 66, he made a decision. From now on, He'd take the interstate. It might be more crowded, but at least there were more witnesses, more people around if something went wrong. The CB crackled to life again as he drove. Different voices now. Truckers warning each other about mile marker 147, the community looking out for its own, the way it always had. But Clyde couldn't shake the feeling that Mabel and Chester were still out there somewhere, pulled off on some other dark stretch of highway, waiting for the next trucker who might not be quite so careful, quite so lucky. He drove through the rest of the night without stopping, pushing through his fatigue until the sun came up over the desert, painting the world in shades of gold and red. Only then, with daylight chasing away the shadows, did the knot in his stomach finally start to loosen. But even weeks later, safe at home in his apartment in Los Angeles between runs, Clyde would sometimes wake up in the middle of the night thinking he heard Mabel's voice. "Please, we need help. There's been an accident." And he'd lie there in the dark, wondering what would have happened if he'd been just a little less cautious, a little more trusting. He never did find out what happened to Mabel and Chester. The police reports he checked later mentioned finding the abandoned sedan, but no arrests were made. The car had been reported stolen 3 states away. The names were probably fake. They'd vanished into the vast emptiness of the American Southwest, maybe to set up the same scheme somewhere else, on some other lonely stretch of highway. All Clyde knew for certain was that he'd never look at a roadside emergency the same way again. Every time he saw hazard lights flashing in the darkness, he'd remember that night on Route 66, remember Mabel's tears and Chester's tire iron, and he'd keep driving. Some might call it paranoid. Clyde called it survival. 3 weeks after the incident at mile marker 147, Clyde was back on Route 66. He'd told himself he'd stick to the interstate, but the construction delays and traffic had finally worn him down. Besides, it was broad daylight. 2 in the afternoon under a blazing October sun. What could go wrong in the middle of the day? He was hauling automotive parts this time, heading east from Los Angeles to Oklahoma City. The familiar rhythm of the road had lulled him into that meditative state truckers know well, where you're alert but calm, watching the miles tick by. The CB had been quiet for the last hour, just the occasional check-in from other drivers passing by. That's when he saw the motorcycle on the shoulder. It was a Harley, one of the big touring models, lying on its side about 50 yards ahead. A figure in black leather was kneeling beside it, and as Clyde approached, the person stood and started waving. It was a woman, her long dark hair whipping in the wind. Clyde's foot moved instinctively to the brake, then hesitated. The voice in his head, the one that had saved him 3 weeks ago, whispered a warning. But this was different. It was daylight. There were other vehicles on the road, and it was just one person, not 2. He pulled over about 40 feet behind the motorcycle, keeping his engine running. This time he also grabbed the tire thumper from beside his seat, a small club truckers use to check tire pressure. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. The woman jogged toward him as he climbed down. She was younger than Mabel had been, maybe 35, with grease on her hands and a frustrated expression on her face. "Thank God you stopped," she said, and Clyde's stomach tightened. Same words Mabel had used. "My bike just died on me. 1 second I'm cruising along, the next it's sputtering and dying." "You call for a tow?" Clyde asked, keeping his distance. "My phone's dead," she said, holding up an iPhone with a cracked screen. "Been dead since yesterday. I kept meaning to charge it, but..." She shrugged helplessly. Clyde studied her, looking for the tells. But everything seemed legitimate. The grease on her hands looked real, and he could smell gasoline from the direction of the bike. Her leather jacket was dusty and worn, with patches from various motorcycle rallies. She looked exactly like what she claimed to be, a stranded biker. "I can call a tow for you," Clyde offered, pulling out his own phone. "Actually," she said, "I was hoping you might have some tools. I think it's just the fuel line.
If I could borrow a screwdriver and maybe some pliers, I could probably fix it myself." Clyde hesitated. He had a toolbox in the cab, but getting it would mean turning his back on her, climbing up into the truck. 3 weeks ago, that's when Chester had made his move. "Look," the woman said, seeming to sense his reluctance. "I get it. A woman alone on the highway asking for help. You're smart to be careful. How about this? You stand right there, keep an eye on me, and just tell me if you have tools or not. If you do, you can toss them down to me. You don't have to come any closer." It was such a reasonable suggestion that Clyde found himself relaxing slightly. "Yeah, okay. I've got a toolbox. Give me a second." He climbed back into his cab, but kept looking back at her through the window. She hadn't moved, was just standing there with her arms crossed, waiting patiently. Clyde grabbed his toolbox and climbed back down. "Here," he said, setting it on the ground and sliding it toward her with his foot. "Take what you need." "You're a lifesaver," she said, grabbing the box and heading back to her bike.
Clyde watched as she knelt beside the Harley, genuinely seeming to work on something near the engine. She knew what she was doing, too, her movements confident and practiced. Maybe he was being paranoid. Maybe the thing with Mabel and Chester had just made him see danger everywhere. 5 minutes passed. 10. Other vehicles passed by. A couple of cars, another truck. The woman kept working, occasionally cursing under her breath. Finally, she stood up, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Try it now," she called to herself, then seemed to remember the bike was on its side. "Shit. Hey, could you help me get it upright? I can't lift it by myself." And there it was, the request to come closer, to put himself in a vulnerable position. Clyde felt the familiar tightness in his chest. "Sorry, ma'am, but I really need to get going. Keep the tools. I've got spares." Her expression flickered. Disappointment, maybe anger, but she recovered quickly. "Oh, okay. Thanks anyway." Clyde was already backing toward his truck when he heard another engine. A pickup truck was pulling off the road, stopping right behind the motorcycle. 2 men got out. One was tall and thin, wearing a baseball cap. The other was shorter, stockier, in a flannel shirt, despite the heat. "Everything okay here, Mabel?" the tall one asked. Clyde froze. Mabel. The woman's face went pale. "It's fine, Chester," she said quickly, but the damage was done. Clyde ran for his truck. This time he didn't look back, didn't hesitate. He heard shouting behind him, heard footsteps on gravel, but he was already climbing into the cab, already slamming the door. In his mirror, he saw Chester, because it had to be the same Chester, tall and thin just like before, running after him. The truck roared to life and Clyde pulled away, tires squealing. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the wheel steady. They'd found him. Somehow, they'd found him. Or maybe it was just coincidence. Maybe they worked this whole stretch of Route 66. But either way, they'd try it again. He grabbed his CB handset, switching to Channel 9. "Emergency. Emergency. This is Big Iron on Route 66 eastbound, mile marker 238. Same scam artists from 3 weeks ago are at it again. Woman with a motorcycle, 2 men in a pickup. They're using the names Mabel and Chester. Do not stop." The response was immediate and angry. Other truckers cursing, promising to relay the information, some saying they were calling 911 right now. One voice cut through the chatter. "Big Iron, this is Desert Fox. I'm about 5 minutes behind you. I'll keep an eye out, make sure they're not following you." "Appreciate it, Desert Fox." Clyde drove for another hour before stopping, and then only at a busy truck stop with security cameras and plenty of witnesses. He called the police again, gave another report. This time he had a partial plate number from the pickup, though he wasn't sure if it would help. The officer who took his statement was a young woman who seemed genuinely concerned. "Mr. Hutchinson, have you considered that these people might be targeting you specifically?
What do you mean? Well, you said the woman called the tall man Chester, and he called her Mabel. Those are the same names you reported 3 weeks ago. Either it's an incredible coincidence or they wanted me to know it was them. Clyde finished. His blood ran cold. Have you had any other encounters with these people? Before the first incident, I mean. Any reason someone might be targeting you? Clyde thought about it, really thought about it. Had he cut someone off in traffic? Had a dispute at a truck stop? Testified against someone? But nothing came to mind. No, ma'am. Nothing I can think of. The officer gave him her card, told him to call if anything else happened. She also suggested he vary his routes, maybe take some time off. These people seem fixated on you for some reason. It might be best to stay off Route 66 for a while. But Clyde couldn't afford to take time off. He was an owner-operator, and every day off the road was money lost. Besides, changing routes would mean explaining to his dispatcher why he was suddenly refusing certain jobs. In the cutthroat world of independent trucking, being seen as unreliable or difficult was a career killer. So he kept driving, but he took precautions. He bought a dash cam for his truck, front and rear facing. He started carrying pepper spray in addition to his tire thumper. He never stopped for anyone on the shoulder, no matter how legitimate the emergency looked. And he stayed in constant communication with other truckers, checking in every hour, letting people know his location. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. Clyde started to relax, to think maybe Mabel and Chester had moved on, found easier targets. Then, on a foggy November morning, he saw the sedan again. It was the same white sedan from the first encounter, parked at a rest stop just outside Flagstaff. Clyde recognized it immediately. The same license plate he'd reported to the police. It was empty, but parked in such a way that anyone exiting the rest stop would have to pass right by it. Clyde didn't stop. He kept driving, but he called it in immediately. 20 minutes later, his CB crackled with news. The police had arrived at the rest stop to find the sedan abandoned. Inside, they'd found something disturbing. A notebook filled with information about various truckers. Routes, schedules, CB handles, license plates. Clyde's information took up 3 pages. They were studying him, learning his patterns, his habits. The realization made his skin crawl. That night, Clyde called his ex-wife from a motel room in Albuquerque. They'd been divorced for 5 years, but they still talked occasionally, especially about their grown daughter. "Linda, I need you to do something for me," he said after explaining the situation. "Check on Sarah. Make sure she's okay, that no one's been bothering her." "Jesus, Clyde, you're scaring me. Should we call the police?" "I've already talked to them. Just, please, check on her." Linda called back an hour later. Sarah was fine, safe at her apartment in Denver. No one had been following her. Nothing unusual had happened. But the fear in Linda's voice was clear. "What have you gotten yourself into, Clyde?" "I don't know," he admitted. "I honestly don't know." He thought about quitting, finding another line of work. But at 53, with no other skills and a truck loan to pay off, what else could he do? Besides, a stubborn part of him refused to be driven off the road by a couple of criminals. He'd been driving Route 66 for over 2 decades. It was his territory as much as theirs. The next morning, he made a decision. If Mabel and Chester wanted to play games, he'd play back. He called a friend who worked in private security, arranged to have his truck fitted with better locks, an alarm system, even a GPS tracker hidden in the chassis. He joined an online forum for truckers who'd been targeted by highway criminals, sharing information and warnings. But the best decision he made was to team up with another driver. Big Tom Morrison was an ex-Marine, 6'4" and built like a linebacker despite being in his 60s. They started coordinating their runs, driving in convoy whenever their routes aligned. Safety in numbers. It was Tom who spotted them next. They were running the same scam 50 miles outside of Amarillo, but this time with a twist. The breakdown was a minivan with a baby on board sticker, and Mabel was holding what looked like an infant carrier. "That's low, even for them," Tom growled over the CB. "Using a fake baby to get people to stop." They called it in, kept driving, but the image stayed with Clyde. Mabel standing by the roadside, holding that carrier, looking desperate and maternal. How many people would stop for a mother with a baby? How many good Samaritans would walk right into that trap? The police reports he accessed later confirmed his fears. 2 truckers had gone missing in the last month, both last seen on Route 66. Neither had been found. The authorities were finally taking it seriously, setting up a task force. But Clyde knew how vast and empty the highway could be. Mabel and Chester could operate for months without getting caught, maybe years. As November turned to December, Clyde found himself changing. The friendly, helpful trucker who'd always been ready to lend a hand was gone, replaced by someone harder, more suspicious. He trusted no one he didn't know personally. He saw potential threats everywhere. His daughter called it paranoia. Clyde called it adaptation. The week before Christmas, everything changed. Clyde was holed up in a motel room in Gallup, New Mexico, watching the local news while he waited for a load to be ready the next morning. He'd just finished a microwave dinner when the anchor mentioned something that made him drop his plastic fork. "Discovered the bodies of 2 missing truck drivers in a ravine approximately 15 miles outside of Flagstaff. The victims have been identified as Robert Chen, 45, of Sacramento, and James Patterson, 38, of Phoenix. Both men had been reported missing in the last 6 weeks while driving routes along Highway 66. Clyde sat on the edge of the bed, his hands shaking. He knew both those names. Chen drove for the same company he sometimes contracted with. Patterson he'd actually met once at a truck stop in Kingman. Good men, both of them. Family men. The news report continued with footage of police cars surrounding a desolate area of desert, yellow tape blocking off a ravine. The reporter mentioned that both men had been shot, their trucks found abandoned miles away from where their bodies were discovered. Personal belongings were missing. Police suspected robbery but weren't ruling out other motives. Clyde's phone rang. It was Tom Morrison. "You watching the news?" Tom's gruff voice asked. "Yeah. It's them, isn't it? Mabel and Chester. Has to be." There was a long pause. Then Tom said, "I'm done with Route 66, Clyde. I'm too old for this shit. Going to stick to I-40 from now on, maybe look into local runs only." Clyde couldn't blame him. But as he hung up, he felt something harden inside him. 2 good men were dead. How many others would die if Mabel and Chester weren't stopped? The police were trying, but they didn't know these highways like truckers did. They didn't understand the patterns, the vulnerable points where drivers had no choice but to slow down or stop. That night, Clyde made a decision that would have seemed insane just a few months earlier. He was going to hunt them. Not to confront them. He wasn't that stupid. But to find them, track them, and make sure the police finally caught them. He started by mapping every incident, every sighting, every near miss reported on the trucker forums and CB channels. A pattern emerged. Mabel and Chester never worked the same spot twice in a row, but they did cycle through locations. Mile marker 147, mile marker 238, the rest stop outside Flagstaff, a particular stretch near the Texas border. They were rotating through about 7 different spots, probably figuring enough time would pass between incidents that drivers would let their guard down. Clyde also noticed something else. The incidents always happened between midnight and 4 a.m., or during the late afternoon lull between 2 and 5 p.m., times when there was less traffic, fewer witnesses, but still enough truckers on the road to make it worthwhile. He started adjusting his runs to pass through those areas during those times. It was dangerous, maybe even stupid, but he couldn't just sit back and wait for the next driver to disappear.
He kept his dash cams running constantly, his phone ready to call 911 at a moment's notice. For 2 weeks, nothing. Then, just after New Year's, he saw them. It was 3 a.m., and he was approaching mile marker 147, the site of their first attempt on him. His headlights caught the familiar white sedan, hazards flashing. But this time, Clyde was ready. He slowed down just enough to get a clear view with his dash cam, then accelerated past. Mabel was out there with her floral dress, but now he could see Chester clearly too, standing in the shadows by the car, something in his hand. Clyde didn't stop. He drove another mile down the road, pulled over, and called 911. "There are 2 people attempting to rob truckers at mile marker 147 on Route 66, he told the dispatcher. "White sedan, Arizona plates." He rattled off the license number. "The woman is flagging down vehicles while a man waits in ambush. They're armed and dangerous. They've killed before." "Sir, how do you know they've—" "Just send units now," Clyde insisted. "They never stay in one spot for more than an hour." He hung up and waited, watching his mirrors. 20 minutes later, he saw the police lights in the distance racing down the highway. His CB crackled with chatter from other truckers who'd seen the cops flying by. Then, nothing. No news, no updates. Clyde drove on to his delivery, but he couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. Had the police caught them? Had Mabel and Chester escaped again? He checked the news obsessively for the next 2 days, but there was nothing about an arrest. Then, on the 3rd day, Tom called him. "You're not going to believe this," Tom said. "Remember that couple working the highway? Word on the CB is they tried to rob the wrong trucker last night. Guy was off-duty cop, driving his personal rig for extra money, pulled a gun on them when they tried their ambush. They get arrested? That's the thing. They got away. But the cop got a good look at them, and get this, there wasn't just 2 of them. There was a 3rd person in the sedan, someone in the back seat controlling everything." Clyde felt his blood run cold. 3 people. They'd been dealing with 3 people this whole time, and they'd never known about the 3rd. "Who was it?" Clyde asked. "Nobody knows. The cop said he only got a glimpse. But here's the really messed up part. He said Mabel and Chester seemed scared of whoever it was, like they weren't the ones running the show." This changed everything. Mabel and Chester weren't the masterminds. They were just the front, the distraction. Someone else was pulling the strings. Clyde started going back through all his notes, all the incidents, looking for patterns he might have missed. That's when he noticed something that made his skin crawl. In every report where someone had gotten a good look at Mabel, they described her differently. Sometimes she was 45 with brown hair. Sometimes 35 with black hair. Sometimes heavy-set, sometimes thin. Either Mabel was a master of disguise or there were multiple Mabels. The same was true for Chester. Tall and thin in some reports, short and stocky in others. Young in some, older in others. "Jesus Christ," Clyde whispered to himself in his motel room. "It's not just 3 people. It's a whole ring." He called the detective who'd taken his statement after the 2nd incident. She listened to his theory with interest. "We've been thinking the same thing," she admitted. "These aren't just random criminals. This is organized, professional. We think they might be part of a larger trafficking operation." "Trafficking? Those missing truckers. We don't think they were all killed. Some of them might have been taken for other purposes. Forced labor, maybe worse. Their trucks stripped and sold, their identities stolen." The thought made Clyde sick. He'd been thinking of this as a robbery scheme, maybe murder for money, but trafficking? That was a whole different level of evil. "We need drivers like you to keep reporting," the detective said. "You know these roads, you know what to look for. But, Mr. Hutchinson, please, don't try to be a hero. These people are more dangerous than we initially thought." But Clyde couldn't let it go. Not now, not knowing what he knew. He started coordinating with other drivers, setting up an informal network of watchers.
They'd report any suspicious vehicles, any fake emergencies, anything that seemed off. The CB channels buzzed with coded warnings. Smoky at 147 meant police were in the area. Mabel's sighting at 238 meant someone had seen the scam in action. It was working. The incidents dropped off. Mabel and Chester, or whoever was playing them, seemed to realize they were being watched. They moved their operations, maybe to different highways, maybe to different states. But Clyde knew they hadn't gone far. Predators like that didn't just give up. They adapted. In February, Clyde was making a run through Arizona when he stopped at a truck stop he'd used dozens of times before. It was busy, well lit, the kind of place he felt safe. He was walking back to his truck after dinner when he noticed someone standing beside it. It was a woman, but not Mabel. This woman was younger, maybe 25, with red hair and a leather jacket. She was just standing there, not trying to break in, not even touching the truck. Just standing. "Can I help you?" Clyde called out, his hand moving to the pepper spray in his pocket. The woman turned to look at him, and her expression was strange. Sad, almost apologetic. "You're Clyde Hutchinson," she said. It wasn't a question. "Who's asking?" "My name is Rachel. I need to talk to you. About Mabel and Chester." Every instinct told Clyde to run, to get help, to do anything but engage with this woman. But something in her voice, in her eyes, made him pause. "Are you with them?" he asked. "I was," she said quietly. "But not anymore. I got out, and I want to help stop them." "Why should I believe you?" Rachel lifted her shirt slightly, revealing a mass of scars across her stomach. "Because they did this to me when I tried to leave the first time. Because I know where they're going to be tomorrow night. And because if we don't stop them soon, they're going to kill a lot more people." Clyde stood there in the truck stop parking lot, the sounds of diesel engines and distant conversation washing over him. Every rational part of his brain said this was another trap, another game. But looking at those scars, seeing the genuine fear in Rachel's eyes, he made a choice that would change everything. "Okay," he said. "Let's talk. But not here. Too public." "There's a diner about 5 miles east," Rachel said. "Mickey's. It's where truckers go when they don't want company. We can talk there." Clyde knew the place. It was indeed quiet, off the beaten path. If this was a trap, it would be a perfect spot for it. But it was also the kind of place where people minded their own business, where difficult conversations could happen without interruption. "I'll follow you," he said. As he climbed into his truck, Clyde wondered if he was about to solve this mystery or become its next victim. He thought about Chen and Patterson, about all the missing drivers, about the fear that had gripped Route 66 for months. Then he started his engine and followed Rachel's taillights into the darkness. The diner was exactly as grim as he remembered, fluorescent lights flickering over cracked vinyl booths, a tired-looking waitress who didn't even glance up as they entered. They took a booth in the back corner, ordered coffee neither of them wanted. "Start talking," Clyde said. Rachel wrapped her hands around her mug, staring into the black coffee. "You were right about it being more than just Mabel and Chester. There are 12 of us. We're 12. Now 11, I guess. Who's running it?" "A man named Eugene. I don't know his last name. Nobody does. He finds people like me, runaways, addicts, people with nowhere else to go, offers them work, a place to stay, a family." She laughed bitterly. "Some family. And the murders? That wasn't supposed to happen. It was just supposed to be robbery. Take the trucks, strip them, sell the parts. The drivers would be left stranded but alive. But Eugene got paranoid, said witnesses were too dangerous. Chester, the real Chester, not all the men who play him. He likes the killing, gets off on it." "How many Chesters are there?" 3, 4 Mabels. The rest of us play other roles: lookouts, drivers, people to move the stolen goods. Clyde's mind was racing. Why Route 66 specifically? Because it's perfect. Empty stretches, predictable traffic patterns, lots of places to hide, and truckers are ideal victims, often carrying cash, valuable loads, and they're alone. She paused. Eugene used to be a trucker himself.
He knows how you think, how you operate. Where are they going to be tomorrow night? Rachel pulled out a worn piece of paper, slid it across the table. It was a hand-drawn map showing a section of Route 66 near the New Mexico-Texas border. There's an old way station that's been closed for years. They use it as a staging area. Tomorrow night, they're planning to hit 3 trucks in succession. It's going to be their biggest score yet.
Why are you telling me this?
Because I can't go to the police.
I've been part of this. I've done things. They'll arrest me too. But you? You can call it in. You can stop them without me being involved. Clyde studied the map, memorizing every detail. Then he looked back at Rachel. Those scars. Chester did that? Eugene ordered it. Chester carried it out. Said it would be a lesson to the others about what happens when you try to leave. But you left anyway. I saw what they did to those 2 truckers, Chen and Patterson. I was there when... She stopped, unable to continue. I can't be part of that anymore. I'd rather die than help them kill another innocent person. Clyde believed her. Maybe it was stupid. Maybe he was being played. But something in her broken expression convinced him she was telling the truth. Clyde left the diner with Rachel's map burning a hole in his pocket. He sat in his truck for a long time, engine idling, trying to decide what to do. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap, that Rachel was just another player in Eugene's sick game. But those scars on her stomach hadn't been fake. The fear in her eyes hadn't been an act. He pulled out his phone and called the detective who'd been working the case. It went to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. It was nearly midnight. She was probably off duty. He could call 911, but what would he say? That a woman he'd never met before had given him information about a criminal ring? They'd want to know his source, want to question Rachel. She'd run rather than face that, and the opportunity would be lost. Clyde made a decision that went against every bit of common sense he had. He called Tom Morrison. "Tom, I need you to listen and not ask questions," he said when the older trucker answered. "Tomorrow night there's going to be trouble at the old way station near the Texas border. Mile marker 289. I need you to call in an anonymous tip to the state police around 8 p.m. Tell them there's major criminal activity happening there." "Clyde, what the hell are you—" "Please, Tom, just do this for me. 8 p.m. tomorrow, mile marker 289. There was a long pause. Then Tom said, "You're going there, aren't you? You're going to do something stupid." "I'm going to do something necessary. I'm coming with you." "No, absolutely not. I need you safe, making that call. If something happens to me, you're the only one who'll know where I went." "Clyde." He hung up and turned off his phone. No more arguments. No more chances to be talked out of this. The next day crawled by. Clyde made his delivery in Amarillo, picked up a new load heading west. It would take him right past mile marker 289 around 7 p.m., an hour before the planned attacks, if Rachel's information was accurate. He'd have time to scout the area, maybe get some evidence before Tom called in the cavalry. As the sun set over the desert, painting the sky in shades of blood orange and purple, Clyde found himself thinking about his daughter. Sarah was 28 now, working as a nurse in Denver. She'd always worried about him out on the roads, always asked him to consider retiring, finding safer work. After tonight, maybe he would, if he survived tonight. Mile marker 287, 288. His hands were sweating on the steering wheel. 289. The old way station sat about a quarter-mile off the highway, connected by a crumbling access road. From the highway, it looked completely abandoned. Broken windows, graffiti-covered walls,
weeds growing through cracks in the concrete, the perfect hiding spot. Clyde drove past, continued for another mile, then pulled off onto a service road. He'd leave his truck here, approach on foot. It was insane, but he needed to see for himself, needed to know if Rachel had told the truth. He grabbed his tire thumper, his pepper spray, and his phone. Then, after a moment's hesitation, he reached under his seat and pulled out the .38 revolver he'd bought after the second encounter with Mabel and Chester. He'd never fired it except at a range, hoped he wouldn't have to tonight. But better to have it and not need it. The walk back to the way station took 15 minutes. By the time he arrived, full darkness had settled over the desert. Clyde stayed low, moving carefully through the scrub brush and rocks. As he got closer, he saw lights. Flashlights moving inside the building, the glow of cigarettes outside, and vehicles. 3 cars, 2 pickups, and a van. More than enough to run the kind of operation Rachel had described. Clyde crept closer, using an old drainage ditch for cover. He could hear voices now, multiple people talking. Then, clear as day, he heard a woman's voice he recognized. "Eugene wants us ready by 7:30, Mabel was saying. Not the fake, desperate Mabel from the highway, but her real voice, harder, colder. "Chester, you take position at marker 285. Draw them in like always." "I'm tired of playing the injured husband," a man replied. Chester, but not the tall, thin one Clyde had seen. This voice was deeper, rougher, one of the other Chesters. "Why can't Rodriguez do it for once?" "Because you're the best at it," Mabel replied. "You've got that trustworthy face." Someone laughed. "Trustworthy face. Right. Tell that to the last guy who trusted him." "Enough," a new voice said. Male, authoritative. It had to be Eugene. "We do this right. We get 3 trucks, maybe 4. That's enough to set us up for months. But I want clean kills. No witnesses, no complications." Clyde's blood ran cold. Clean kills. They were planning to murder whoever they robbed tonight. He pulled out his phone, started recording video. The quality would be terrible in the low light, but maybe it would be enough. He needed evidence, needed proof of what was happening here. That's when he felt the gun barrel against the back of his head. "Well, well," a familiar voice said. "Clyde Hutchinson. Rachel said you might show up." Clyde's heart sank. It had been a trap after all. "Drop the gun," the voice said. "And the phone. Slowly." Clyde complied, his mind racing. The man behind him called out, "Eugene, we got company." The lights in the way station turned toward them. Footsteps approached. Eugene emerged from the darkness. A man in his 50s, gray beard, wearing an expensive-looking leather jacket. He looked like someone's grandfather, not a murderer. "Mr. Hutchinson," Eugene said, his voice calm, almost friendly. "The famous Clyde. You've caused us quite a bit of trouble." "The police know I'm here," Clyde lied. "They're already on their way." Eugene smiled. "No, they're not, but nice try." He nodded to the man holding the gun on Clyde. "Bring him inside." They marched Clyde into the way station. The inside had been converted into a makeshift headquarters, tables covered with maps and phones, sleeping bags in the corners, boxes of what looked like stolen goods stacked against the walls. About 10 people were scattered around the room, all watching him with expressions ranging from curiosity to hostility. Mabel was there, the real Mabel. She looked nothing like the woman who'd flagged him down that first night. She was younger, harder, with cold eyes that sized him up like a predator evaluating prey. "You're the one who got away," she said. "Twice." "3 times, actually," Chester said from across the room. This was the tall, thin Chester, the one from the first encounter. "If you count that thing with the motorcycle." "That was stupid," Eugene said, his friendly demeanor vanishing.
You let it get personal. This is business, not revenge. He cost us money, Chester protested. And now he's here, Eugene replied. Problem solved. They tied Clyde to a chair, took his keys, his wallet, everything. Eugene pulled up another chair, sat facing him. Here's what's going to happen, Eugene said. You're going to call your dispatcher. Tell them you're taking a few days off, family emergency. Then you're going to give us the information for your bank accounts, any safes you have, everything. After that, he shrugged. Well, let's focus on the first part. Go to hell, Clyde said. Eugene sighed. Chester, convince Mr. Hutchinson to cooperate. Chester stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. But before he could swing, the door burst open. Rachel ran in, breathless, panicked. Eugene, there's cops. Multiple units coming down the highway. What? Eugene stood, angry. How many? I don't know, 5, 6 cars maybe. They're heading this way. Tom, Clyde thought. He'd called early, God bless him. Eugene's eyes narrowed, looking between Rachel and Clyde. You set this up. No, Rachel protested. I just saw them and... Check her, Eugene ordered. One of the other men grabbed Rachel, started patting her down. He pulled out a small device from her pocket, a GPS tracker. You little bitch, Eugene snarled. You're working with them. Rachel's eyes went wide. No, I don't know how that... Eugene pulled out a gun, pointed it at her. You turned rat. Eugene, we don't have time for this, Mabel said urgently. We need to go, now. Outside, sirens were becoming audible. Multiple sirens, getting closer. Pack everything, Eugene ordered. We're leaving. What about him? Chester asked, pointing at Clyde. Eugene looked at Clyde for a long moment. Then he raised his gun. The window exploded. Police spotlights flooded the room as a voice boomed over a megaphone. This is the state police! We have the building surrounded! Come out with your hands up! Eugene fired at the window. Chester flipped a table, pulled out his own gun. Suddenly, everyone was moving, grabbing weapons, taking positions. Rachel used the chaos to dive behind a stack of boxes. Eugene Waters, the megaphone voice called. We know you're in there. There's no way out. Eugene Waters. They knew his full name. How? Eugene seemed to realize the same thing. His eyes found Rachel hiding behind the boxes. You didn't just turn rat, he said. You've been working with them all along. Rachel stood up, and suddenly she didn't look scared anymore. She looked determined. 6 months, she said. I've been undercover for 6 months, gathering evidence. And now I've got all of it. Every murder, every robbery, every one of your sick games. She pulled out a badge. FBI. Eugene raised his gun to shoot her, but Clyde threw himself sideways, chair and all, crashing into Eugene's legs. The shot went wild. Chester turned to shoot Clyde, but Rachel already had her service weapon out. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Chester went down. Others started shooting at the windows, at the police outside. Tear gas canisters crashed through the broken windows, filling the room with burning smoke. In the chaos, Clyde felt someone cutting his bonds. It was Rachel. Get down and stay down, she shouted over the noise. The raid was over in minutes. Some of Eugene's people surrendered immediately. Others tried to fight, but they were outnumbered, outgunned. Eugene himself tried to escape through a back window, but was tackled by waiting officers. When the smoke cleared, Clyde found himself sitting on the ground outside, a paramedic checking him for injuries. Rachel stood nearby, talking to a man in an FBI windbreaker. She noticed him looking and walked over. I'm sorry, she said, for lying to you, for using you. But we needed someone Eugene would believe was a real threat, someone who'd draw him out. You used me as bait. Yes, but I also saved your life. Eugene would have killed you tonight, whether you'd shown up or not. He'd marked you as a threat that needed to be eliminated. Clyde thought about being angry, but found he couldn't muster the energy. Those scars. Were they real? Rachel lifted her shirt slightly. The scars were still there. Eugene did this to an informant 2 years ago. A woman who tried to leave and talk to the police. She died from the injuries. I've been carrying her story with me ever since. So, Chen and Patterson, we have evidence linking Eugene's organization to their murders and 5 others, plus dozens of robberies across 4 states. This is one of the largest highway crime rings we've ever taken down. Clyde watched as Eugene was loaded into a police car, Chester into an ambulance, Mabel and the others into various law enforcement vehicles. It was over. It was really over. What happens now? He asked. You go back to your life, Rachel said. Drive your routes, deliver your loads. Route 66 is safe again, thanks to you. Thanks to you, you mean? It was a team effort. She pulled out a business card. My real name is Agent Sarah Foster. If you ever need anything, call me. Clyde took the card, noticed his hands weren't shaking anymore. Will I have to testify? Probably. But with the evidence we have, confession from some of the members who are already trying to cut deals, it should be straightforward. Tom Morrison arrived an hour later, having driven like a madman after calling in the tip. He found Clyde sitting in a police car giving his statement to a detective. You stupid son of a bitch, Tom said. You could have been killed. I know. You're a goddamn hero, you know that? I'm not. I'm just a trucker who got lucky. But as Clyde drove away from that way station, following Tom's taillights back onto Route 66, he realized something had changed. The highway didn't feel threatening anymore. The shadows didn't hide monsters. It was just a road again, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the desert. 6 months later, Clyde testified at Eugene Waters' trial. The man was convicted on multiple counts of murder, robbery, trafficking, and conspiracy, life without parole. Chester, real name Dennis McCarthy, got the death penalty. Mabel, Rebecca Thornton, got 40 years. The rest received various sentences ranging from 10 years to life. Agent Foster testified too, describing her 6 months undercover, the evidence she'd gathered, the risks she'd taken. She was commended for her bravery, promoted, moved on to other cases. Clyde went back to driving, but he made some changes. He took on a partner, a young driver named Miguel, who reminded him of himself 20 years ago. They ran routes together, watching each other's backs, teaching the new generation of truckers to be careful, to be smart, to trust their instincts. And sometimes, late at night on Route 66, when Clyde saw hazard lights flashing on the shoulder, he'd slow down. He'd look carefully, and if it seemed legitimate, if his gut said it was safe, he'd stop to help. Because that's what truckers did. They looked out for each other, but he always kept his gun within reach, and he always trusted his instincts, because the highway might be safer now, but it was never truly safe. There would always be predators out there, always be new schemes, new dangers. The best anyone could do was stay alert, stay alive, and keep rolling. The last time Clyde saw Rachel, Agent Foster, was at a truck stop near Flagstaff, almost a year after the raid. She was in civilian clothes, grabbing coffee, looking like any other traveler. Their eyes met across the parking lot, and she walked over. How's the road treating you? She asked. Can't complain. You? Different case, different highway, same types of bad guys. They stood there for a moment, 2 people who'd shared something intense and dangerous, not sure what else to say. Thank you, she finally said, for trusting me that night at the diner, even though I was lying to you, even though it was a trap. It wasn't all a lie, Clyde said. You really did want to stop them. Yes, I did. She walked away and Clyde never saw her again. But sometimes when he drove past that old way station, now demolished, nothing but a flat patch of desert, he'd think about that night, about Eugene and Mabel and Chester, about the truckers who didn't make it, about the ones who did, because the ring was stopped. Route 66 stretched out before him, endless and unforgiving, beautiful and dangerous. It had tried to kill him, had taught him fear, had made him harder and more careful. But it was still his road. It would always be his road. And somewhere out there, another trucker was just starting their shift, checking their mirrors, trusting their instincts, ready for whatever the highway might throw at them. The road went on, and so did Clyde. Earl Dawson had been hauling freight for 31 years, and in all that time, he'd never lost a load. Not once. It was a point of pride with him, something he'd mentioned to younger drivers when they gathered at truck stops to swap stories. 31 years, he'd say, tapping the worn wooden dashboard of his Kenworth. And every single piece of cargo has made it from point A to point B. That streak ended on a cold February night on Route 66, somewhere between Amarillo and Oklahoma City. Earl was carrying a high-value load, computer equipment bound for a distribution center in Chicago. The manifest showed $2.8 million worth of servers and networking hardware, all sealed in a climate-controlled trailer that was locked tighter than Fort Knox. Or so he thought. The first sign something was wrong came at around 11 p.m. Earl had stopped at a truck stop near the Texas-Oklahoma border to refuel and grab a cup of coffee. It was a regular stop for him, a place he'd been dozens of times before. The lot was about half full, maybe 20 trucks scattered around, their running lights creating pools of amber in the darkness. As Earl climbed down from his cab, a woman approached him. She was maybe 30, wearing jeans and a denim jacket, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked like any other traveler, except for the way she was staring at him. "Earl Dawson?" she asked. Earl paused, his hand still on the truck door. "Do I know you?" "No, but I know you. My name's Agnes. I work for the company that's shipping your load." Earl's guard went up immediately. In 31 years, he'd never had someone from a client company approach him at a random truck stop. They communicated through dispatch, through official channels, not face-to-face meetings in the middle of the night. "That's so," Earl said carefully. "Which company would that be?" Agnes smiled. "Tech Forward Solutions. The servers you're hauling? There's been a change of plans." "I don't know anything about any change of plans." "That's why I'm here." She pulled out a phone, showed him what looked like an official email. "There's been a security breach at the Chicago facility. We need to reroute the shipment to our backup location in Tulsa." Earl didn't even look at the phone. "Lady, I don't know who you are, but I don't take orders from anyone except my dispatcher. You want to change the delivery? You call the company, they call me." Agnes's friendly expression faltered slightly. "Mr. Dawson, this is time-sensitive. Every minute we delay increases the security risk." "Then you better call fast." Earl turned to walk toward the fuel pumps. $500,000, Agnes said quietly. Earl stopped. "That's what we're prepared to offer you," she continued. "Cash, tax-free. All you have to do is drive to a warehouse in Tulsa instead of Chicago. Same distance, same amount of work. You drop the load, take your money, continue to Chicago, and tell your company the shipment was delivered as planned." Earl turned around slowly. "You're asking me to steal from my employer?" "We're asking you to help us recover our own property," Agnes said. "There's been a dispute with the shipping company. Legal complications. This is our merchandise, Mr. Dawson. We're just trying to get it back." "Then handle it through lawyers. That could take months. We need those servers now." Earl studied her for a long moment. Everything about this screamed setup. But there was something else. Something in the way she kept glancing around the truck stop, the way her hand stayed close to her pocket. She was nervous, scared even. "The answer's no," Earl said firmly. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to fuel up." Agnes's expression hardened. "That's unfortunate, Mr. Dawson. Really unfortunate." She walked away, disappearing between the rows of parked trucks. Earl watched her go, then quickly pulled out his phone and called his dispatcher. "Yeah, this is Earl. Listen, I just had something weird happen." He explained the encounter, Agnes's offer, everything. The dispatcher, a guy named Hank, who'd been with the company almost as long as Earl, listened without interrupting. "Jesus, Earl. You think it was legit?" "I think someone wants this load bad enough to throw around serious money. I'm calling the client right now. Verify this shipment is what it's supposed to be. In the meantime, you be careful. Maybe skip the fuel and head to the next stop." But Earl needed fuel. His tank was running close to empty. Wouldn't make it to the next station. "I'll fuel up quick and get moving. Call me back when you hear something." Earl fueled his truck, constantly scanning the lot for any sign of Agnes or anyone else watching him. The other truckers went about their business, oblivious to his tension. He saw a couple of lot lizards making their rounds, a family in a minivan stretching their legs, normal truck stop activity, nothing suspicious. He was just replacing the fuel cap when he noticed the man standing by his trailer. The guy was tall, maybe 6'2", wearing dark clothes and a baseball cap pulled low. He was running his hand along the trailer's seal, examining the lock mechanism. "Hey!" Earl shouted. "Get away from there!" The man looked up, seemed to consider his options, then walked away unhurriedly. Not running, not panicking, just walking like he had every right to be there. Earl noticed he was heading toward a black SUV parked at the edge of the lot. Earl's phone rang. It was Hank. "Earl, we've got a problem. I can't reach anyone at Tech Forward. Their emergency number goes to voicemail. And get this. I looked them up online. The company exists, but their website hasn't been updated in 2 years." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't know what you're hauling, but I don't think it's what's on the manifest. I'm calling the cops." "No, wait," Earl said. "If we get the authorities involved and this is some kind of mix-up, the company could lose the client. Let me deliver it to Chicago as planned. If there's something wrong, they can sort it out there." "Earl, someone just offered you $500,000 for that load. That's not normal." "I know. That's why I'm going to be extra careful. I'm leaving now, driving straight through. No more stops." Earl climbed back into his cab, started the engine. As he pulled out of the truck stop, he noticed the black SUV following him. It stayed back about a quarter mile, matching his speed exactly. Earl grabbed his CB. "Breaker, breaker. This is Iron Horse eastbound on 66. I've got a black SUV trailing me. Might be trouble. Anyone else seeing this?" Several voices responded, confirming the SUV. One trucker, running westbound, said he'd seen the same vehicle parked at the previous rest stop. They'd been waiting for him. Earl pushed harder on the accelerator, bringing the truck up to the speed limit. The SUV maintained its distance. He tried slowing down. The SUV slowed too. They weren't trying to hide the fact they were following him. His phone rang again. This time it wasn't Hank. The number was blocked. "Mr. Dawson," a man's voice said. Calm, professional. "My name is Virgil. I believe you met my associate Agnes earlier. I don't know who you are, but please don't hang up. I'm calling to make you a better offer." "I already said no." "You said no to 500,000. What about $1 million?" Earl's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Not interested." "Mr. Dawson, do you know what you're hauling?" "Computer equipment." Virgil laughed. "Is that what they told you?" "Mr. Dawson, you're carrying something much more valuable than servers. Something that belongs to us. Something that was stolen from us." "Then call the police." "We can't do that. The people who stole from us have connections, protection. The legal system won't help us. That's why we need you." "The answer is still no." There was a pause. Then Virgil's voice, colder now. "Mr. Dawson, you have a daughter in Memphis, Sarah. She works at Baptist Memorial Hospital, night shifts in the emergency room." Earl's blood turned to ice. "You son of a bitch." "We're not threatening her," Virgil said quickly. "I'm simply pointing out that we know who you are. We know your life, your routines, your family. We're serious people, Mr. Dawson, but we're also reasonable. Take the money, deliver the load to us, and everyone wins. If you touch my daughter, we won't. You have my word. But this offer has an expiration date. You have 1 hour to decide. Keep driving toward Chicago and we'll assume you've declined. Turn south toward Tulsa and we'll know you've accepted. $1 million, Mr. Dawson, tax-free. Think about what that could mean for your retirement." The line went dead. Earl's mind raced. They knew about Sarah. How? Had they been researching him? Following him? And what was really in his trailer that was worth $1 million to these people? He called Sarah immediately. She answered on the third ring, sounding tired. "Dad, it's like midnight. Everything okay?" "Sarah, listen to me. Are you at work?" "Yeah, just on break. What's wrong?" "I need you to be careful tonight. Maybe ask security to walk you to your car when you leave." "Dad, you're scaring me. What's going on?" Earl thought fast. "I had a weird encounter at a truck stop. Some crazy person asking about family stuff. It's probably nothing, but just be careful, okay?" "Should I call the police?" No, just be aware of your surroundings. And call me when you get home." "Dad, please, Sarah, just do this for me." She agreed, still sounding worried. Earl hung up and immediately called Hank again. "They threatened my daughter," he said without preamble. "What?" "Earl, who threatened?" "The people who want the load. They know about Sarah, where she works." "Hank, what the hell am I carrying?" "I don't know, I swear. The manifest says computer equipment. The client is listed as Tech Forward Solutions. Everything looked legitimate." "Yeah, well, legitimate companies don't offer truckers $1 million to redirect shipments." In his mirrors, Earl could see the SUV still following. But now there was another vehicle, a white van, running parallel on a frontage road. They were boxing him in. "Hank, I need you to call the state police. Tell them—" The truck lurched. Something had hit the trailer. Earl looked in his mirror and saw a motorcycle pulling alongside, the rider holding something. It looked like a cutting tool. They were trying to breach the trailer while it was moving. Earl swerved slightly, trying to shake the motorcycle off. The rider backed off, but didn't disappear. Meanwhile, the SUV had closed the distance, now only about 50 feet behind. "Earl? Earl, what's happening?" Hank's voice crackled through the phone. "They're trying to get into the trailer while I'm driving. I'm calling 911 right now." Earl pushed the accelerator to the floor. The truck responded sluggishly, the weight of the trailer holding him back. 80,000 pounds doesn't accelerate quickly, no matter how much you want it to. The motorcycle was back, this time on the other side. Earl saw sparks flying from the trailer's lock mechanism. They had some kind of portable cutting torch. Up ahead, Earl saw an exit sign. He made a split-second decision and took the exit at speed, the truck leaning dangerously as it navigated the curve. The motorcycle had to brake hard to avoid being crushed. The SUV followed, tires squealing. Earl found himself on a 2-lane state highway, darker and emptier than Route 66. No streetlights, no other traffic, just him and his pursuers. His CB crackled. "Iron Horse, this is Big Dog. I'm about 2 miles behind you. Just saw you take that exit. You still got company?" It was another trucker, one who'd heard his earlier call. "Roger that, Big Dog. Black SUV and a motorcycle. They're trying to cut into my trailer." "I'm coming up fast. Maybe we can box them in." But before Big Dog could catch up, Earl saw something that made his heart sink. Up ahead, across both lanes of the highway, was a semi-truck, just stopped, blocking the entire road. It was a trap. They'd herded him off the main highway and into a trap. Earl slammed on the brakes, the truck's air brakes hissing like angry serpents. The rig shuddered to a stop about 50 feet from the blocking semi. In his mirrors, he could see the SUV and motorcycle pulling up behind him, cutting off any chance of reversing. He was boxed in completely. The CB crackled with Big Dog's voice. "Iron Horse, I see the roadblock. I'm calling the cops right now. Hang tight, brother." But Earl knew the police wouldn't get here in time. These people, whoever they were, had planned this perfectly. An isolated stretch of highway, no witnesses except for Big Dog, who was still a mile back, and complete control of the situation. The door of the blocking semi opened, and a man climbed down. Even in the darkness, Earl could see he was carrying something. As the figure walked closer, Earl's headlights illuminated him clearly. It was Virgil. Had to be. Tall, well-dressed in a black suit that seemed absurdly out of place on this empty highway. He was maybe 45, with salt and pepper hair and the bearing of someone used to being in charge, and he was carrying a shotgun. Earl locked his doors, grabbed his phone to call 911. No signal. They were using a cell phone jammer. Of course they were. These weren't amateur hijackers. Virgil walked up to Earl's door, the shotgun held casually at his side. He knocked on the window almost politely. "Mr. Dawson," his voice was muffled but audible through the glass. "Please step out of the vehicle. We need to talk." "Go to hell!" Earl shouted back. "Mr. Dawson, let me explain the situation. Behind you are 3 of my associates. To your left and right I have men in position in the trees. There's no cellular service for 5 miles in any direction. The police, even if your friend back there has called them, are at least 20 minutes away. You can either step out and have a civilized conversation, or we can break the windows and drag you out. I'd prefer the former." Earl looked around. He could see shapes moving in the darkness on both sides of the highway. More than 3 people behind him. He counted at least 5 now. Big Dog's truck was visible in the distance, stopped but not approaching. Smart man knew better than to drive into this situation. Earl grabbed the tire iron from beside his seat. It wasn't much against guns, but it was something. Then he opened the door and climbed down, keeping the iron visible but not threatening. "There's no need for that," Virgil said, gesturing at the tire iron. "We're businessmen, Mr. Dawson, not thugs. Businessmen don't hijack trucks. They do when those trucks are carrying stolen property." Virgil moved closer but stayed out of swinging range. Smart. "Mr. Dawson, do you know what cryptocurrency mining hardware is?" "Computer stuff. Specific computer stuff. The equipment in your trailer isn't servers. It's next-generation ASIC miners. Machines designed specifically to mine Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. That trailer contains about 500 units, each worth approximately $50,000 on the black market." Earl did the math. $25 million. That's impossible. The manifest says, "The manifest lies. These machines were stolen from our operation in Nevada 6 months ago. We've been tracking them ever since. The thieves have been moving them in small batches, using legitimate shipping companies as unwitting mules. You're just the latest in a long chain. If that's true, call the FBI." Virgil laughed bitterly. "The FBI? Mr. Dawson, the people who stole from us have connections you wouldn't believe. Judges, prosecutors, federal agents. We tried the legal route, files disappeared, witnesses recanted, cases were dropped. So now we're handling it ourselves." Agnes appeared from behind the SUV, still in her denim jacket, but now openly carrying a pistol. "Virgil, we need to move." Big Dog back there is probably live streaming this to every trucker in the state. She's right, Virgil said. So, here's what's going to happen. You're going to unlock the trailer. We're going to transfer the contents to our vehicles. You're going to report to your company that you were hijacked at gunpoint, which is technically true. Insurance covers the loss. You're held blameless. Everyone moves on. Except I know what you look like. I know your names. Aliases, Mr. Dawson. After tonight, Virgil and Agnes cease to exist. We become other people in other places. He pulled out a thick envelope from his jacket. But because we've inconvenienced you and because we're not monsters, here's $50,000. Call it compensation for your trouble. Earl looked at the envelope. $50,000 would pay off the last of his truck loan. It would give him breathing room. And what choice did he really have? They had guns, numbers, and a plan. He had a tire iron and good intentions. What happens if I say no? Then we take it anyway, but you get hurt in the process. And Mr. Dawson, at your age, did you really want to be a hero over someone else's stolen property? Before Earl could respond, there was a commotion behind them. Big Dog's voice boomed over a megaphone. The clever bastard had a PA system. This is being live streamed to Facebook. Everybody can see you. The cops are already on their way. Virgil's calm demeanor cracked slightly. He looked at Agnes, who was already moving toward Big Dog's position with two other men. Don't hurt him, Earl said quickly. He's just trying to help. No one gets hurt if everyone cooperates, Virgil said. But his attention was divided now, watching his people advance on Big Dog's truck. That's when Earl heard it. Sirens. Distant, but getting closer. Multiple sirens. Virgil heard them too. His face hardened. Open the trailer, now. No. Virgil raised the shotgun, pointing it at Earl's chest. I wasn't asking. Virgil! Agnes's voice called out. We've got maybe 3 minutes. The sirens were definitely getting louder. Earl could see the indecision on Virgil's face. Take the time to break into the trailer and risk getting caught, or run now and lose $25 million in cryptocurrency miners. The offer stands, Virgil said urgently. $1 million. Wire transfer to any account you specify. Just open the trailer. I can't. It's on a timer lock. Won't open until I reach the destination. It was a lie, but Virgil had no way to know that. Timer locks were common on high-value shipments. Virgil cursed. He looked at the approaching lights of police cars, then back at Earl. You're making a mistake. The people who actually own this shipment, not the shell company on your manifest, but the real owners, they're going to come for it, and they won't be as civilized as us. I'll take my chances. Virgil stared at him for a long moment, then lowered the shotgun. Everyone back to the vehicles! We're leaving! His people scrambled back to their cars. Within seconds, the blocking semi was moving, pulling off the road. The SUV and motorcycle roared to life. They scattered in different directions. The semi heading north on a dirt road Earl hadn't even noticed. The SUV going back the way they came. The motorcycle cutting across a field. By the time the police arrived, 2 state troopers and a sheriff's deputy, only Earl and Big Dog remained. Big Dog had climbed down from his truck and was walking over, his phone still recording. You okay, Iron Horse? Big Dog asked. He was a massive man, probably 300 pounds, with a graying beard and kind eyes. Yeah, thanks to you. That live stream thing was genius. Big Dog grinned. Weren't no live stream. Phone's been dead for an hour.
But they didn't know that.
The police took their statements, examined the trailer, which was untouched, and put out bolos for the vehicles. But Earl knew they wouldn't find anything. Virgil had been right. These were professionals. They'd have dumped those vehicles within an hour, switched to clean ones, and disappeared. One of the state troopers, an older guy named Morrison, pulled Earl aside after the official statement was done. Mr. Dawson, between you and me, you might want to deliver that load and then take a vacation, maybe a long one. You think they'll come back? I think anybody willing to set up that elaborate of a hijacking isn't going to give up after one try. And if what they said about the cargo is true, you believe them? About the cryptocurrency stuff? Morrison shrugged. I've seen stranger things. Had a case last year, a truck full of what was supposed to be agricultural equipment. Turned out to be stolen military hardware. These shipping companies don't always know what they're moving. Earl and Big Dog convoyed the rest of the way to Oklahoma City, where Earl stopped at a secure truck stop for what remained of the night. He barely slept, jumping at every sound, checking his mirrors constantly. In the morning, he called Hank. Jesus, Earl, I heard about last night. Are you okay? I'm fine, but Hank, I need you to level with me. What am I really hauling? There was a long pause. I don't know. I swear I don't. But I made some calls after we talked. Tech Forward Solutions. The company exists, but it's weird. Incorporated in Delaware, no physical address, no employees I can find. It's like a shell. So Virgil might have been telling the truth. Maybe. Or maybe he was lying to get you to cooperate. Either way, you need to deliver this load and walk away. But it wasn't that simple. As Earl drove toward Chicago, he noticed he was being followed again. Not obviously like before. These were different vehicles, staying farther back, switching positions. Professional surveillance. He stopped for fuel in Missouri, and Agnes was there. Different clothes, different hair color, but definitely her. She was filling up a red sedan 2 pumps over. She didn't approach him, didn't even look at him directly. But as she walked past his truck to pay, she dropped something. A phone. Earl picked it up. It was a burner with one number programmed in. He pocketed it and continued driving. That night, parked at a rest stop 50 miles outside of Chicago, the phone rang. Mr. Dawson, Virgil's voice said. I apologize for last night. Things got out of hand. What do you want? The same thing. But I want to tell you something first. The people who hired your company to move this shipment, they're not who you think they are. They're part of a larger organization. Criminals, Mr. Dawson. Real ones. The kind who traffic in more than just stolen property. And you're what? The good guys? We're the lesser evil. The cryptocurrency miners were purchased legally by our consortium. We have the receipts, the blockchain records, everything. But proving ownership in court when the other side has judges in their pocket? Impossible. Why should I believe you? Check the news tomorrow. Chicago. There's going to be a raid on a warehouse. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking. The same warehouse where you're supposed to deliver your load. How could you know that? Because we've been watching them for months, tracking our property. Mr. Dawson, if you deliver that trailer tomorrow, you're going to drive right into a federal raid. You'll be arrested, interrogated, probably held as a material witness for months. Your reputation, your career, gone. Earl's hands were sweating. You're lying. Am I? Think about it. Why would a legitimate tech company use a shell corporation? Why would they ship through a small trucking company instead of a major logistics firm? Why is the delivery address a warehouse in an industrial district instead of a corporate facility? Earl hadn't thought about the delivery address, but Virgil was right. It was strange. A warehouse in a rough part of Chicago, not the kind of place you'd expect millions in computer equipment to go. The $1 million is still on the table, Virgil continued. Or if you prefer, just walk away. Park the truck, leave the keys, disappear for a few days. We'll handle the rest. I can't do that. Then deliver it and face the consequences. But Mr. Dawson, your daughter Sarah, how do you think she'll handle seeing her father arrested on federal charges? Don't you dare! I'm not threatening her. I'm pointing out reality. Tomorrow, that warehouse gets raided. Anyone there gets arrested, including you. The line went dead. Earl sat in his dark cab staring at the phone. Was Virgil telling the truth? Or was this just another manipulation? He started his laptop,
connected to the truck stop's Wi-Fi and began researching. The delivery address, the company, anything he could find. The warehouse was owned by another shell company. That company was owned by another and another, a maze of corporate structures designed to hide the real owners. But buried in property records, he found something. 5 years ago, the warehouse had been raided. Drugs were found. The case had been thrown out on a technicality, but the connection was there. Earl then searched for cryptocurrency mining thefts in Nevada. He found it. 6 months ago, a facility outside Reno reported a massive theft. 500 ASIC miners, valued at $25 million. The description matched what could be in his trailer. As dawn broke over the rest stop, Earl made a decision. He called his dispatcher. "Hank, I can't deliver this load." "What? Earl, what are you talking about? The people who want it, the place I'm supposed to deliver it, it's all wrong. I think we're being used to transport stolen goods." "Earl, you can't just refuse to deliver. You'll lose your job, your license. Then I lose them. But I'm not driving into what might be a federal raid." There was a long silence. Then Hank said, "What if we reroute? Deliver to the company's registered address instead of the warehouse? Tech Forward doesn't have a real address. It's a shell company. Then we hold the load, bring it back to our yard, let the lawyers sort it out." It was a reasonable solution. Earl agreed and started heading back toward Texas. But he'd only gone 50 miles when his regular phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Dawson, this is Special Agent Garrett with the FBI. I understand you're carrying a shipment of interest to us." Earl's heart sank. "How did you—" "We've been monitoring the situation. Mr. Dawson, I need you to deliver that shipment as planned." "To the warehouse? But—" "We're aware of the warehouse. We need that delivery to happen. It's part of an ongoing investigation." "You want me to deliver potentially stolen goods to criminals?" "We want you to complete your delivery as contracted. What happens after that isn't your concern." Earl understood now. The FBI was running their own operation. They wanted to track the stolen goods, follow them to bigger fish. "And if I refuse?" "Then you're interfering with a federal investigation. That's a serious crime, Mr. Dawson." Earl was trapped. Virgil's people wanted the load. The FBI wanted him to deliver it to criminals they were investigating. His own company just wanted it off their hands, and everyone was using him as a pawn. "I need to think," Earl said. "You have until noon, Mr. Dawson. Then we expect you to be heading toward Chicago." Earl pulled off at the next exit, found a quiet spot in an abandoned lot and parked. He sat there, looking at the trailer that had caused so much trouble. 25 million in stolen goods, or legally purchased equipment illegally stolen, or something else entirely. He didn't know what to believe anymore. The burner phone Virgil had given him rang while Earl sat in that abandoned lot, still trying to decide what to do. "Mr. Dawson," Virgil's voice was urgent. "You're not moving. Why aren't you moving?" "How do you know where I—" Earl stopped. Of course. They'd probably put a tracker on his truck during one of the stops. "I'm thinking." "Think faster. The FBI agent who called you. That wasn't really FBI." "What?" "Agent Garrett doesn't exist. We checked. Someone else wants you to deliver that load to the warehouse, and they're impersonating federal agents to do it." Earl's head was spinning. "How do I know you're not lying?" "Call the FBI field office in Chicago. Ask for Agent Garrett. See what they say." Earl did exactly that, using his regular phone. The receptionist who answered sounded confused when he asked for Agent Garrett. "I'm sorry, sir. We don't have an agent by that name. Can I ask what this is regarding?" Earl hung up. The sick feeling in his stomach grew worse. If not FBI, then who? The criminals who actually owned the warehouse? The ones who'd stolen the miners in the first place? His regular phone rang immediately, the same Agent Garrett from before.
Mr. Dawson, why did you just call the Chicago field office? Wanted to verify you are who you say you are. There was a pause. Mr. Dawson, I'm with a special task force. We're not listed in the regular directory for security reasons, but I assure you, I'm legitimate. Now, are you going to deliver that load or not? I need more time. Time's up, Mr. Dawson. Deliver the load, or we'll have you arrested for interstate transportation of stolen goods. You have 1 hour to be back en route to Chicago. The line went dead. Earl sat there, looking at his 2 phones. One connected him to Virgil, who claimed to be the rightful owner of the cargo. One to his regular life, which was being threatened by someone claiming to be FBI. He had no idea who to trust. Then he had an idea. He called Big Dog, the trucker who'd helped him the night before. "Hey, brother," Big Dog's booming voice answered. "You make it to Chicago, okay?" "Not yet. Listen, I need a favor, a big one. After last night, anything you need. I need you to take my load." There was a pause. "Come again?" "I'm going to unhitch my trailer at the next truck stop. You pick it up, deliver it to Chicago. The paperwork will show a mechanical issue required a swap. It happens all the time." "Earl, what's going on? This about those people from last night?" "It's about everyone. Look, I can't explain everything, but this load is poison. Everyone wants it, everyone's threatening me, and I don't know who the good guys are anymore. But if you deliver it, just a standard delivery, no one knowing the swap happened until it's done, then you're out of the crosshairs." "Exactly." Big Dog was quiet for a moment. "What's really in that trailer, Earl?" "Either stolen cryptocurrency miners worth $25 million, or legitimate computer equipment, or something else entirely. I honestly don't know anymore." "And you want me to drive this hot potato into Chicago?" "I'll pay you. 10,000. Everything I've got saved." "Keep your money, brother. But if I'm doing this, we do it smart. We need a 3rd truck, someone to take my load while I take yours. Make it look like a regular shuffle." They arranged to meet at a large truck stop near Springfield, Illinois. Earl arrived first, parking in the back of the lot where the security cameras had blind spots. He'd learned a few things about avoiding surveillance over the past few days. While he waited, both phones rang constantly. Virgil, offering more money, making more threats. Agent Garrett demanding to know why he'd stopped. Hank from dispatch asking for updates. Earl ignored them all. Big Dog arrived an hour later with another trucker, a young woman named Maria who Earl had met a few times before. She was ex-military, tough as nails, and more importantly, she ran with a dash cam system that uploaded to the cloud in real time. Everything would be documented. "You sure about this?" Big Dog asked as they prepared to swap trailers. "No, but I'm sure I want out of this mess." The swap took 15 minutes. Papers were signed, manifests updated, everything legitimate and by the book. To anyone watching, it would look like a standard equipment issue requiring a trailer swap. As Big Dog pulled away with the cursed load, Earl felt a weight lift off his shoulders. Then his burner phone rang. "Very clever, Mr. Dawson," Virgil said. "But we're tracking the trailer, not you." "Then follow Big Dog to Chicago. I'm done." "You're not done. You're the only one who knows the full story. The fake FBI, us, the real owners. You're a witness to all of it." "I don't know anything. I'm just a trucker who had mechanical problems." "Mr. Dawson." Earl threw the burner phone out the window, watched it shatter on the asphalt. Then he did the same with his regular phone. He'd get a new one later, claim he lost it in the chaos. He drove his newly acquired empty trailer toward Chicago, taking his time, stopping at every way station, every rest stop, acting like nothing was wrong. Just another trucker on another run. Meanwhile, Big Dog was making good time with the actual load. Earl had given him the delivery address, warned him about the possibility of it being raided, told him to document everything. Big Dog had just laughed. "Brother, I've been driving for 40 years. I've delivered to mob fronts, biker bars, and places that turned out to be meth labs. One more sketchy warehouse won't kill me. But Earl couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was going to happen. He'd dragged Big Dog into this mess. If something went wrong... He reached Chicago the next morning, stopped at a truck stop to buy a new phone. The first thing he did was check the news. The headline hit him like a punch to the gut. Major FBI raid nets dozens in Chicago crime sweep. The article described a massive operation targeting multiple locations across Chicago, including a warehouse in an industrial district. The same warehouse where Big Dog was supposed to deliver the load. Earl's new phone rang. Unknown number. "Earl, it's Big Dog. You're not going to believe what happened." "Are you okay? Did you get arrested?" "Arrested? Hell no. I never made it to the warehouse. About 5 miles out, I get pulled over by a convoy of black SUVs. Real FBI this time, with proper credentials and everything. They took the trailer, gave me a receipt, told me to forget this ever happened." "Real FBI?" "Yeah. Turns out your boy Virgil was telling the truth. That warehouse was full of bad people doing bad things. The FBI had been planning the raid for months. The cryptocurrency miners were just a bonus they weren't expecting." Earl slumped in his seat. So, Virgil was telling the truth. They really were the legitimate owners. Maybe. Or maybe the FBI just wanted to seize everything and sort it out later. Either way, it's not our problem anymore. But it wasn't that simple. That afternoon, Earl got a call from Hank. "Earl, we've got a situation. The client is claiming we never delivered the load. Big Dog delivered it. The FBI seized it. That's not delivery, that's confiscation. Insurance won't cover it because we can't prove the load was stolen. The client is demanding $28 million in damages." $28 million? The manifest said it was worth $2.8. They're claiming the manifest was wrong, that it was specialized equipment worth much more. Earl knew then that everyone had been lying. The shell company, Virgil, the fake FBI, probably even the real FBI. The cargo had been a prize everyone wanted, and truckers like him and Big Dog were just pawns in their game. "The company's going to have to sue somebody," Hank continued. "Either the client for fraud or you for the unauthorized trailer swap." "Sue me then. I don't have $28 million. Earl, this could end your career." "My career ended the moment I picked up that load." Over the next few weeks, the situation grew more complex. The FBI confirmed they had seized the trailer but wouldn't confirm what was in it, citing an ongoing investigation. The shell company disappeared entirely. Phone disconnected, website gone, corporate registration lapsed. Earl's company's insurance refused to pay out without proof of theft or fraud. Then Agnes appeared again. Earl was at home in Texas, his truck parked while lawyers sorted out the mess, when she knocked on his door. She looked different. Professional clothes, minimal makeup, like a real estate agent or something. "Mr. Dawson, may I come in?" "No," she smiled. "Fair enough. I'll be brief. Virgil wants you to know that the situation has been resolved." "Resolved how?" "The actual owners of the miners, our consortium, have reached an agreement with the FBI. We've proven ownership. They've returned our property minus a finder's fee. Everyone's happy. Except me. I'm being sued. About that." She handed him an envelope. "That's a cashier's check for $2 million. Consider it a consulting fee." Earl stared at the check. "Why?" "Because you did the right thing, even when you didn't know what that was. Because you stood up to us, to the fake FBI, to everyone. That takes courage. Virgil respects courage. And if I don't take it, then your company goes bankrupt from the lawsuit, you lose everything and nobody wins. Take the money, Earl. Pay off the lawsuit, retire, enjoy your life. Why do you care what happens to me?" Agnes looked at him for a long moment. "Because Virgil used to be a trucker. 20 years ago, before he got into cryptocurrency. He knows what it's like to be caught between forces you don't understand, carrying loads that could destroy your life. He got lucky,
got out, made his fortune. He wants you to have the same chance. This is guilt money. This is justice money. The real criminals are in jail. The stolen property has been returned. The only person still suffering is you. And that's not right. Earl took the check. He used it to settle the lawsuit, pay off his truck, and put the rest away for retirement. He kept driving for another year, but his heart wasn't in it anymore. Every load made him paranoid, wondering what was really in the trailer, who was really behind the shipment. Big Dog called him regularly, checking in. He'd become something of a legend among truckers, the man who'd delivered a load to the FBI in the middle of a massive raid and walked away clean. "You ever hear from Virgil again?" Big Dog asked during one call. "No, Agnes neither. They vanished, like they said they would." "You think they were really the good guys?" Earl thought about it. "I think they were criminals who got robbed by worse criminals. In their world, that makes them victims. In our world, it just makes them criminals with a grievance. And us? We're just truckers, brother. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong load." 6 months after everything ended, Earl was cleaning out his truck for the last time. He'd finally decided to retire when he found something tucked behind the seat. A small GPS tracker, the kind you could buy on Amazon for $50. But there was something else attached to it. A note written in neat handwriting. "Mr. Dawson, you probably found this long after everything was over. I wanted you to know that we were never going to hurt you or your daughter. The threats were just leverage, desperate moves by desperate people. The tracker was to protect you as much as to follow the load. There were other parties involved, dangerous ones, who might have tried to eliminate witnesses. We made sure that didn't happen. Take care of yourself. Enjoy retirement. And remember, sometimes the only way to win is not to play. V." Earl burned the note and threw the tracker in the trash. But he kept thinking about that last line. Sometimes the only way to win is not to play. He'd played, though. They'd forced him into the game whether he wanted it or not. And somehow, through luck or instinct or divine intervention, he'd survived it. That had to count for something. His last run was a simple one. Auto parts from Dallas to Houston. No shell companies, no mysterious clients, no one following him. Just a straight, honest haul. The way it used to be. The way it should be. As he pulled into the final delivery dock, Earl felt something he hadn't felt in months. Peace. The road had taken everything from him. His certainty, his trust, his simple view of the world. But it had given him something, too. The knowledge that he could face the worst and survive. He signed the delivery papers, handed over the keys to the new owner who'd bought his truck, and walked away. 31 years and 1 stolen load. Not a bad record, all things considered. But sometimes, late at night, Earl would wonder about those cryptocurrency miners. Where they ended up. Who really owned them. Whether Virgil was out there somewhere, running another scheme, recruiting another trucker into another dangerous game. And he'd be grateful that it wasn't his problem anymore. 3 years after Earl Dawson retired, he got a call that changed everything. He was living quietly in a small house outside Austin, spending his days fishing and trying to forget about the trucking business when his daughter Sarah called. "Dad, there's someone here to see you. She says she knows you from your trucking days." Earl's blood went cold. "What's her name?" "She says you'd know her as Agnes." Earl hadn't touched a gun in 2 years, but he found himself reaching for the drawer where he kept his .38. "Tell her I'm not home." "Dad, she's already in the house. She said you'd say that. She also said to tell you she's not here about the load. She's here about Virgil." Against his better judgment, Earl drove the 20 minutes to Sarah's house. Agnes was sitting in the living room, looking nothing like the woman he'd met 3 years ago. Her hair was gray now, cut short. She looked tired, worn down, scared. "Hello, Earl," she said when he walked in.
I thought you disappeared. New names, new lives. We did, but someone found us anyway. She looked at Sarah. Could you give us a few minutes? Sarah looked at her father, who nodded. When she left, Agnes continued. Virgil's dead, Earl. They killed him 2 weeks ago. Earl sat down slowly. Who's they? The people who originally stole the miners. The ones we took them back from. They've been hunting us ever since the FBI raid. One by one, they've found everyone who was involved. Why are you telling me this? Because you're on their list too. The trucker who wouldn't play ball, who complicated their plans. They blame you as much as us for losing that shipment. Earl felt the old fear creeping back. I'm retired. I'm nobody. You were a witness. You can identify people, tell stories. In their world, that makes you a threat. So what am I supposed to do? Run? Hide? Agnes pulled out a phone, showed him a photo. It was a man Earl recognized, the tall Chester from that night on Route 66. His real name was Dennis Volkov. He was found in a ditch in Nevada last month, tortured before he died. Jesus. There are only 3 of us left from the original crew. Me, you, and Big Dog. Big Dog? Why would they care about him? Because he delivered the load to the FBI. Because he knows too much. Because these people don't leave loose ends. Earl thought about Big Dog, probably out on the road right now, completely unaware of the danger. We have to warn him. I tried. His phone's disconnected. His company says he's on vacation, but they won't say where. Earl knew where Big Dog would go on vacation. The same fishing cabin in Colorado he'd been talking about for years. But he wasn't going to tell Agnes that. Trust only went so far. What do you want from me? Earl asked. I want us to go to the FBI. Real FBI this time. Tell them everything. Get into witness protection. You think they'd protect us? After what we did? I think they'd rather have us alive and talking than dead and silent. Before Earl could respond, his phone buzzed. Unknown number, but the area code was from Chicago. He answered it. Mr. Dawson, a cold voice said. You're a hard man to find. Earl put the phone on speaker so Agnes could hear. Who is this? Someone who's been looking for you for 3 years. You cost us $25 million, Mr. Dawson. That's not something we forget. I don't know what you're talking about. Route 66, February 2021. A trailer full of cryptocurrency miners. Ring any bells? Agnes was already on her phone, texting rapidly. She showed Earl the screen. Keep him talking, tracing the call. That was a legitimate shipment, Earl said. I was just the driver. You were the driver who wouldn't cooperate, who called the police, who complicated everything. If you'd just pulled over when Virgil asked, none of this would have been necessary. Virgil's dead, isn't he? Very dead, as is Mr. Volkov, Ms. Thornton, and several others. You and your friend Agnes are among the last. Oh yes, we know she's there with you. Your daughter's house has such large windows. Earl stood up, moved to the window. Across the street, a black van was parked where it hadn't been before. What do you want? Earl asked. Justice. You cost us money. Now you'll pay it back. With interest. I don't have $25 million. No, but you have something else. Information. Details about the FBI raid. About their methods. Their informants. You're going to tell us everything. I don't know anything about that. Then you're useless to us. And useless people don't need to keep breathing. The line went dead. Agnes was already moving. We need to go. Now. My daughter? Call her. Tell her to go to a hotel. Don't tell her which one. Don't tell anyone. Just go. They left through the back door, Agnes leading the way to a car Earl didn't recognize. As they pulled away, Earl saw the van start to follow. I know a place, Earl said. Industrial district. Lots of trucks. We can lose them there. But Agnes was already taking a different route, driving with the confidence of someone who'd done this before. She took sudden turns, ran yellow lights, doubled back twice. Within 10 minutes, the van was gone. "Where did you learn to drive like that?" Earl asked. "Virgil taught me. Before he was a trucker, he was a wheelman for a crew in Detroit. Said the skills transferred nicely to big rigs." They ended up at a motel on the outskirts of Austin, the kind that took cash and didn't ask questions. Agnes made some calls while Earl tried to reach Big Dog. Still no answer. "We can't go to the FBI," Agnes said after hanging up. "My contact says there's a leak. Someone inside is feeding information to the people hunting us." "Then what do we do?" "We disappear. New identities, new lives. I know people who can help. I'm not running. I've got family here." "Your family's already in danger. The only way to protect them is to remove yourself from the equation." Earl knew she was right, but the thought of leaving Sarah, of never seeing her again, was unbearable. He'd already lost so much to that damned load. That night, while Agnes slept, Earl slipped out of the motel. He had to check on something, had to know if his suspicions were right. He took Agnes's car, drove to a storage unit he'd rented years ago. Inside was everything from his trucking days: logs, papers, receipts, and something else. A hard drive he'd hidden after the incident. Big Dog had given it to him, said it was insurance. The full recording from his dash cam the night he'd delivered the load to the FBI. Earl had never watched it, had been too afraid of what he might see, what it might mean. But now, with people dying and his life in danger, he needed to know. He plugged the drive into his laptop, started the video. It showed Big Dog driving through Chicago, following the GPS to the warehouse. But then something interesting happened. About 5 miles from the destination, before the FBI stopped him, Big Dog had pulled over on his own. Someone had gotten into the truck. The camera caught them clearly. A woman, but not Agnes. Someone Earl had never seen before. She and Big Dog talked for about 10 minutes. Then she handed him something. An envelope. Big Dog opened it, counted what was clearly money, then nodded. The woman left, and Big Dog continued driving. 5 minutes later, the FBI stopped him, just like he'd described. But he'd lied about the woman, about the payoff. Earl's phone rang. It was Big Dog. "Earl, buddy, I just got your messages. What's this about danger?" "Where are you?" "At my cabin in Colorado, like always. Why? What's going on?" Earl wanted to ask about the woman, the money, but not over the phone. "People are looking for us. People connected to that load from 3 years ago." "That's ancient history." "Not to them. Virgil's dead. So are most of the others involved." There was a long pause. "How do you know about Virgil?" "Agnes told me. She's here." Another pause, longer this time. "Earl, you need to be careful. Agnes isn't who you think she is." "What do you mean?" "I mean I did some digging after that night. Agnes wasn't part of Virgil's crew. She was working for the other side, the ones who stole the miners in the first place." Earl's blood ran cold. "That's impossible. She was with Virgil when they tried to take the load." "It was a setup, Earl. Think about it. How did the FBI know exactly when to raid that warehouse? How did the fake FBI know to call you? Someone was playing all sides, making sure that load ended up with the feds where nobody could claim it." Agnes. And now she's back, probably trying to tie up loose ends. Earl hung up, his mind racing. He grabbed the hard drive, got back in the car. But as he pulled out of the storage facility, he saw them. 2 vehicles waiting. They'd followed him after all. He floored it, tires squealing. The vehicles gave chase. Earl's 3 years of retirement hadn't dulled his driving skills. He took corners at dangerous speeds, used his knowledge of Austin's back roads, but they stayed with him. His phone rang. Agnes. "Where are you?" she demanded. "Being followed. 2 cars." Come back to the motel, so you can finish what you started 3 years ago. A pause. What are you talking about? I know who you really are. I know you were working with the thieves. Agnes laughed, bitter and sharp. Is that what Big Dog told you? Earl, Big Dog was the one working with them. He got paid to deliver that load to the FBI. I have proof. I saw the video. I know about the payoff. That wasn't a payoff. That was a threat. They gave him photos of his family, told him exactly what would happen if he didn't cooperate, just like they threatened your daughter. Earl didn't know what to believe anymore. Everyone was lying. Everyone had an angle. He took a hard right, tires screaming, and suddenly found himself on a dead-end street. The 2 vehicles boxed him in. Men got out, approaching with guns drawn. Earl recognized one of them, the fake Agent Garrett from 3 years ago. Mr. Dawson, Garrett said, we've been looking for you for a long time. I don't have the miners. The FBI has them. We know. But you have something else. Information about everyone involved. Names, faces, places. You're going to tell us everything. I don't know anything. Garrett smiled. We'll see about that. They dragged Earl from the car, zip-tied his hands. As they pushed him toward their vehicle, gunshots erupted. One of Garrett's men went down, then another. Agnes appeared from behind a dumpster, firing steadily. Earl, run! But there was nowhere to run. Earl dropped to the ground as bullets flew over his head. Garrett dove behind a car, returning fire. It was chaos, noise, violence. Then sirens. Multiple sirens, getting closer fast. Cops! One of Garrett's men shouted. We need to go! They retreated to their vehicles, speeding away as the first police car rounded the corner. Agnes grabbed Earl, cut his zip ties. We need to leave. Now! They ran, leaving the car, cutting through yards and alleys. Behind them, the police were arriving in force, setting up a perimeter. But Agnes knew the area, led them through a maze of residential streets until they emerged near a shopping center. She hot-wired a car in the parking lot, another skill Virgil had taught her, apparently, and they drove in silence for several miles. Finally, Earl spoke. Why did you save me? Because, despite what you think, I'm not your enemy. I was Virgil's partner in business and in life. When they killed him, they became my enemy too. Big Dog said, Big Dog is scared and confused, just like you. The people hunting us are good at manipulation, at making us distrust each other. It's how they win. Earl thought about the video, about what he'd seen. The woman who met with Big Dog. Who was she? Agnes glanced at him. What woman? Earl described what he'd seen on the dash cam footage. Agnes's expression darkened. That was Patricia Chen, Robert Chen's widow. The trucker who was killed? The trucker who was murdered by Virgil's crew before I joined them. Patricia wanted revenge. She's the one who stole the miners in the first place, used them as bait to draw out everyone involved in her husband's death. The pieces were starting to fit together. So this was never about cryptocurrency. It was about revenge. Patricia lost her husband to highway killers. She decided to become something worse to get justice. And now she's cleaning up loose ends. Everyone who knows the truth. Everyone who could testify about what really happened. They drove through the night, heading north toward Oklahoma. Agnes had contacts there, she said. People who could help them disappear. But Earl wasn't sure he wanted to disappear. He'd been running from this for 3 years. Maybe it was time to stop. There's another way, he said as they crossed the state line. What do you mean? We give Patricia what she wants. Justice for her husband. Virgil's dead. Most of his crew is dead. What more does she want? The truth. Public acknowledgement. Someone to take responsibility. Agnes looked at him like he was insane. You want to confess to being part of a murder you had nothing to do with? No, but I was part of the cover-up in a way. By not asking questions, by just moving on. We all were. That's not a crime. Maybe not legally, but morally? Earl stared out at the dark highway. How many times did we drive past emergencies that might have been traps? How many people did we not help because we were afraid? That's survival, not guilt. Maybe. Or maybe it's time someone took responsibility for all of it. The murders, the thefts, the fear that's gripped these highways for years. Agnes was quiet for a long time. Then she pulled out her phone, dialed a number. "Who are you calling?" Earl asked. "A friend. Someone who might be able to broker a meeting with Patricia." The meeting was set for 3 days later at a truck stop near the Texas-Oklahoma border. The same truck stop where Earl had first met Agnes the criminal 3 years ago. There was a poetry to it, Earl thought, ending where it all began. Patricia Chen wasn't what Earl expected. She was small, quiet, wearing a simple black dress. She looked like a grieving widow, not a criminal mastermind. She came alone, or at least appeared to. They sat in a booth in the back of the diner, 3 people bound together by a load that had destroyed all their lives in different ways. "You know why I did it?" Patricia said without preamble. "They took Robert from me, left him to die in a ditch. Virgil paid for that," Agnes said coldly. "Virgil was only part of it. The whole system is rotten. Truckers afraid to help each other. Criminals preying on the innocent. Authorities who don't care until it affects the bottom line." Earl understood her anger, even if he couldn't condone her methods. "So what now? You kill us too? Add to the body count?" Patricia studied him. "You're Earl Dawson, the one who wouldn't cooperate. I'm a trucker who got caught in the middle of something I didn't understand. You understood enough to do the right thing. That's why you're still alive. And Agnes?" Agnes was Virgil's woman. She deserves whatever happens to her. Agnes tensed, but Earl put a hand on her arm. She was also the one who tried to stop it, who convinced Virgil to return the miners instead of selling them. Patricia's eyes narrowed. "Is that true?" Agnes nodded. "I didn't know about your husband when I joined Virgil's crew. When I found out, I tried to make things right. The FBI raid, the recovery of the miners. I helped arrange that." "You're lying." "I can prove it." Agnes pulled out a phone, showed Patricia a series of text messages, emails, evidence of her cooperation with law enforcement, her attempts to minimize the violence. Patricia read through them, her expression unreadable. Finally, she looked up. "It doesn't bring Robert back." "No," Earl said. "Nothing will. But killing more people won't either. It just creates more widows, more orphans, more anger. So, what do you propose?" Earl had been thinking about this for 3 days. "We tell the truth. All of it. Go public with the whole story. The murders, the thefts, the corruption. Make sure everyone knows what happened and why. That would implicate all of us. Yes, but it would also end it. No more secrets, no more running, no more killing." Patricia was quiet for a long moment. "And then what? We all go to prison?" "Maybe. Or maybe we find a way to make amends. Use Virgil's money. I know you have it, Agnes, to help the families of the victims. Set up a fund for truckers who've been attacked on the highways. Do something positive with all this pain." It was idealistic, Earl knew. Maybe impossibly so. But he was tired of the cynicism, the violence, the fear. Someone had to try to break the cycle. Patricia stood up. "I'll think about it." She walked away, leaving Earl and Agnes alone in the diner. They sat in silence, drinking coffee that had gone cold. "You know she'll probably just kill us anyway," Agnes said. "Maybe, but at least we tried." 3 days later, Earl got a package at the motel where he was hiding. Inside was a hard drive and a note. The truth. Do with it what you will. P. The hard drive contained everything. Videos, documents, confessions. The full story of the cryptocurrency heist, the murders, the cover-ups. Patricia had recorded everything, documented every crime. It was enough to blow the whole thing wide open. Earl sat staring at the drive for hours. He could take it to the media, expose everyone. Or he could destroy it, let the dead stay buried. Or he could use it as leverage, protect himself and the few survivors. In the end, he chose a fourth option. He contacted a journalist he knew, someone who specialized in long-form investigative pieces about the trucking industry. He gave her the story, but not the evidence. Let her investigate, find her own proof, tell the story properly. The truth would come out, but slowly, carefully, without destroying the innocent along with the guilty. Agnes disappeared the next day. She left a note. Starting over. Don't look for me. Thank you for trying. A. Big Dog called a week later. Heard you're stirring up old trouble. Just trying to end it? You think it'll work? I think it's better than running forever. Maybe. You hear from Patricia again? No. You? No.
Maybe that's for the best. Earl agreed. Some people were better as ghosts, haunting the edges of memory rather than the reality of the present. 6 months later, the story broke. Death on Route 66, the cryptocurrency heist that exposed a highway murder ring. It was picked up nationally, led to congressional hearings about trucker safety, federal investigations into corruption. Earl testified, telling his part of the story. He faced no charges. He'd been a victim, not a perpetrator. But the testimony cost him anyway. His reputation, his peace of mind, his simple view of the world. He never drove a truck again. Couldn't. Every time he saw a big rig, he remembered that night on Route 66, the fear in Virgil's eyes when he talked about the miners, Agnes's desperation, Patricia's grief. But sometimes, late at night, he'd get calls from truckers, young drivers who'd heard his story, who wanted advice about staying safe on the highways. And Earl would tell them the truth. Trust your instincts. Don't stop for strangers. Always have an exit plan. And above all, remember that the load you're carrying is never worth your life. The road would always be dangerous. There would always be predators and prey, criminals and victims. But maybe, just maybe, telling the truth about what happened on Route 66 would make some small difference. Maybe the next Earl Dawson wouldn't have to face what he faced. Maybe the next Patricia Chen wouldn't lose her husband to highway killers. Maybe the cycle of violence could finally be broken. Or maybe not. The highway stretched on, endless and unforgiving, keeping its secrets and claiming its victims. All anyone could do was drive carefully, watch their mirrors, and hope they made it home safely. Earl never found out what happened to the cryptocurrency miners, whether they were returned to their rightful owners, sold at government auction, or disappeared into some federal black site. In the end, it didn't matter. They were just machines, just metal and silicon. The real value had always been in the human lives they'd cost, the fear they'd created, the trust they'd destroyed. $25 million worth of computer equipment, 5 deaths, countless lives disrupted. Was it worth it? Earl knew the answer. It never was. It never would be. But people would keep chasing that kind of money, keep killing for it, keep dying for it. That was human nature, as unchangeable as the highway itself. All Earl could do was tell his story and hope someone, somewhere, would listen. Frank Morrison had been stopping at the Desert Rose truck stop for 15 years. It sat at the intersection of Route 66 and State Highway 54 in New Mexico, one of those sprawling complexes with fuel pumps, a diner, showers, and a repair shop. the kind of place where a trucker could get everything he needed without having to venture into town. Frank liked the Desert Rose. The coffee was strong, the showers were clean, and the night shift waitress, Opal, always remembered that he liked his eggs over easy with wheat toast, no butter. It was as close to a home away from home as a long-haul trucker could ask for. That changed on a humid August night when Frank pulled in around midnight, his Freightliner loaded with furniture bound for Dallas. The first thing he noticed was how empty the lot was. Usually, even at midnight, there'd be 20 or 30 trucks parked for the night. Tonight, there were maybe 5. The second thing he noticed was the man standing by the fuel pumps, not pumping gas, just standing there, watching. Frank had been driving long enough to trust his instincts, and his instincts were telling him something was off. But he needed fuel, and the next stop was 50 miles down the road. He pulled up to the pump, keeping an eye on the watching man. As soon as Frank started fueling, the man approached. He was maybe 50, wearing an expensive-looking suit that was completely out of place at a truck stop. His hair was slicked back, and he had the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Evening, driver," the man said. His voice had a strange accent, not quite Southern, not quite Midwestern. "Frank Morrison, right?" Frank's hand moved instinctively toward the cab where he kept a tire iron. "Do I know you?" "No, but I know you. You run this route twice a week, Dallas to Los Angeles and back. Been doing it for, what, 15 years? Who's asking?" The man pulled out a business card. "Eugene Caldwell. I'm what you might call the new management here at the Desert Rose." Frank looked at the card. It was professionally printed, expensive stock. "Eugene Caldwell, Regional Operations Manager." No company name, no phone number, just the title. "I wasn't aware the Desert Rose had changed hands," Frank said carefully. "Oh, it hasn't. Not officially. The Martinez family still owns it on paper, but we've entered into a partnership. We provide security and other services. They provide the location." Frank had heard about this kind of thing. Protection rackets, mob operations that muscled in on legitimate businesses, but he'd never encountered it personally, and certainly not on Route 66. "Good for you," Frank said, turning back to his fuel pump. "Now, if you'll excuse me, there's a fee," Eugene said casually, "for our services." Frank stopped. "What kind of fee?" "Think of it as insurance. You pay us, we make sure nothing happens to your truck while you're here. No slashed tires, no stolen cargo, no unfortunate accidents." "Are you threatening me?" "Threatening?" Eugene looked genuinely offended. "Mr. Morrison, I'm offering you protection. This is a dangerous world. A lot of bad things can happen to a truck sitting unattended. We're just trying to keep everyone safe." "How much?" $500 per visit." Frank almost laughed. "You're out of your mind. I stop here twice a week. That's $4,000 a month." "Then perhaps you should consider using other truck stops." "Maybe I will." Eugene's smile widened. "That's certainly your choice. But Mr. Morrison, we have partnerships with quite a few stops along Route 66. The Flying J near Amarillo, the Love's outside Flagstaff, that little independent near Needles. You might find our service fees are pretty standard across the board." Frank finished fueling, replaced the cap. "I'm not paying you a dime." "That's unfortunate," Eugene said. He pulled out a small notebook, made a note. "Room for one more in the diner if you're hungry. Opal's working tonight. She makes excellent pie." The casual mention of Opal sent a chill down Frank's spine. These people had been watching him, learning his routines. They knew about Opal. Frank climbed into his cab without another word, pulled away from the pumps. But he didn't leave immediately. Instead, he parked at the edge of the lot where he could see the diner. Through the windows, he could see Opal serving coffee to a couple of drivers. She looked normal, maybe a little tired, but unharmed. His phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Morrison," Eugene's voice said. "You're still in our lot. The meter's running." Frank looked around, spotted a camera on a light pole pointed directly at him. They were watching everything. "I'm leaving," Frank said. "Before you do, you should know that Opal's grandson just started college. Arizona State, engineering major, smart kid. It'd be a shame if something happened that interrupted his education." "You son of a bitch!" "Have a safe drive, Mr. Morrison. We'll see you on your return trip." The line went dead. Frank sat there for a moment, rage and fear warring in his chest. Then he started his engine and pulled out of the Desert Rose, heading east toward Texas. But he couldn't stop thinking about Opal, about her grandson, about Eugene's thinly veiled threats. At the next rest area, Frank called his dispatcher. "Hey, Hank, quick question. You heard anything about trouble at the Desert Rose?" Hank, who'd been dispatching for 30 years and knew every piece of gossip on every highway in America, was quiet for a moment. "Now that you mention it, couple drivers have said they're avoiding it. Didn't say why." "Why? What happened?" Frank explained his encounter with Eugene. Hank whistled low. "Protection racket. Haven't seen one of those in years. Thought that kind of thing died out in the 80s. Well, it's back, and they claim they've got multiple stops under their control." "You believe them?" "I don't know, but I'm not taking chances. Can you route me around the Desert Rose from now on?" "I can try, but Frank, that's going to add miles, time. It'll cut into your profit." "Better than paying $4,000 a month in protection money." Frank delivered his load in Dallas without incident, picked up a return shipment of electronics. But as he headed back west, he found himself taking a different route, avoiding the Desert Rose entirely. It added 2 hours to his trip, cost him more in fuel, but it was worth it to avoid Eugene and his thugs. Or so he thought. 3 days later, Frank was at home in Albuquerque, enjoying his 2 days off, when there was a knock at his door. He opened it to find a young man in a delivery uniform holding a package. "Frank Morrison?" "That's me." "Sign here, please." Frank signed, took the package inside. It was a cardboard box, no return address. Inside was a model truck, a perfect replica of his Freightliner, right down to the license plate. But the model had been destroyed, smashed, burned, twisted into scrap. There was a note. "Avoiding us doesn't change your obligations. $500 per week, whether you stop or not. First payment due Friday. Instructions to follow." Frank's hands shook as he read the note. They'd found his home. They knew where he lived. And now they were extorting him whether he used their truck stop or not. He called the police. A detective came out, took the evidence, said they'd look into it. But his expression said what his words didn't. Without concrete proof of who sent it, without witnesses, there wasn't much they could do. "These people are usually pretty smart," the detective said. "They know how to stay just on the right side of the law. Implied threats instead of explicit ones. Cash payments that can't be traced. You might want to consider just paying them." "You're telling me to give in to extortion?" "I'm telling you to be realistic. $500 a week is what, $26,000 a year? That's less than a new truck costs. Less than a hospital stay if they decide to get physical." After the detective left, Frank sat in his living room staring at the destroyed model truck. He'd been driving for 28 years. He'd dealt with bad weather, worse traffic, and every kind of hazard the road could throw at him. But he'd never dealt with anything like this. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It was a photo of Opal's grandson walking across the ASU campus. The message said, "Nice-looking kid. Shame if he had an accident." That was the line. Threatening Frank was one thing. Threatening Opal's family was another. Frank called Opal directly. She answered on the third ring, sounding tired. "Frank, is everything okay? You don't usually call." "Opal, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Has anyone been bothering you at work? New management? Asking for money?" There was a long pause.
When Opal spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "How did you know?" "They approached me too. Told me about your grandson." "Oh God. Frank, I'm so scared. They said if I didn't cooperate, if I didn't help them identify regular customers, they'd hurt Tommy." "Have you called the police?" "With what proof? They're too smart. Everything's just conversation, just implications, and they have people everywhere. One of the cops who comes in for coffee, I saw him talking to Eugene last week, laughing like old friends." Frank felt his anger building. Corrupt cops, threatened waitresses, extorted truckers. This wasn't just a protection racket. It was a cancer spreading along Route 66. "Opal, I'm going to figure this out. I promise. Don't do anything stupid, Frank. These aren't people you can fight." But Frank had already made up his mind. He'd been pushed around enough. It was time to push back. He spent the next day doing research. Eugene Caldwell was a ghost online. No social media, no business records, nothing. But the Desert Rose had records. Tax filings showed it was still owned by the Martinez family, had been for 40 years. But recent county documents showed liens against the property, debt that had piled up during COVID. Frank drove out to the Martinez house, a modest ranch on the outskirts of town. Mr. Martinez answered the door, an elderly man who looked like he'd aged a decade in the past year. "Mr. Martinez, I'm Frank Morrison. I'm a trucker who stops at your place regularly." "We're not taking complaints," the old man said quickly. "Talk to Eugene." "I'm not here to complain. I'm here to help." Martinez studied him for a moment, then stepped aside. "Come in." Over coffee, Martinez told his story. The truck stop had been struggling. Fewer drivers, higher costs, mounting debt. Then Eugene had appeared, offering a solution. He'd clear the debt, improve cash flow, handle security. All Martinez had to do was look the other way. "I didn't have a choice," Martinez said. "It was that, or lose everything my father built." "How many of them are there?" "Eugene has maybe a dozen guys. They rotate through different stops, but the Desert Rose seems to be their base." "And the police?" Martinez laughed bitterly. "Eugene has photos of the sheriff's son buying drugs. The state police captain owes money to Eugene's sports book. They own half the law enforcement in 3 counties. There has to be someone clean. FBI, maybe? You think Eugene doesn't have connections there too? Mr. Morrison, these people aren't amateurs. They're organized crime. Real organized crime." Frank left the Martinez house with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. Eugene and his crew weren't going to be stopped by conventional means. The law was compromised, the victims were terrified, and the criminals were smart enough to stay technically legal. That's when Frank remembered something his father had told him years ago. His dad had been a trucker too, back in the 70s when the highways were even rougher. "Sometimes," his father had said, "the only way to beat a bully is to be a bigger bully." Frank made some calls, not to law enforcement, but to other truckers. The ones who'd been around, who'd seen things. The ones who knew how to handle problems that the law couldn't or wouldn't touch. One name kept coming up. Marcus "Tank" Jefferson. 6'5", 300 pounds of muscle, and a reputation for solving problems that needed solving. He'd been a trucker, then private security, then something else. Something people didn't talk about openly. Frank found Tank at a bar in Oklahoma City, a dive that catered to bikers and truckers and people who didn't ask questions. "Frank Morrison," Tank said when Frank approached his booth. "Heard you were having trouble with some new friends." News travels fast. Bad news travels faster. Eugene Caldwell and his crew have been working their way along 66 for about 6 months. Started in California, moving east. You're not the first driver they've squeezed. Can you help? Tank took a long pull from his beer. Depends. You looking for legal help or real help? What's the difference? Legal help means private investigators, lawyers, maybe eventually getting Eugene arrested. Takes months, costs a fortune, might not work. Real help means Eugene and his boys find somewhere else to be, permanently. I'm not looking to have anyone killed. Neither am I. Dead bodies bring federal heat, but there are other ways to convince people to relocate. What would it cost? Normally, 50 grand, but Eugene made a mistake. He threatened Opal's grandson. Opal's good people. Her husband drove with me back in the day. For her, I'll do it for expenses. Call it 10 grand. Frank had 12,000 in savings. It was supposed to be for emergencies. This qualified. When can you start? Already have. Eugene's staying at the Sunset Motel, room 237. 3 of his guys are with him. The rest rotate through the truck stops. They collect every Friday, deposit the cash in a storage unit before moving it to whoever's really running this operation. Eugene's not the boss? Eugene's middle management. The real boss is someone called the Judge. Nobody knows his real name, but he's supposedly connected all the way up to Chicago. Frank felt the scope of what he was dealing with expanding. This wasn't just about the Desert Rose or even Route 66. This was organized crime on a level he'd only seen in movies. Tank's first move wasn't what Frank expected. Instead of confronting Eugene directly, Tank started gathering intelligence. He spent 3 days at the Desert Rose, just another trucker passing through, watching everything. Frank, meanwhile, received his payment instructions. A drop location at an abandoned gas station 10 miles from the Desert Rose, $500 in small bills, placed in a paper bag behind a dumpster, like something out of a bad movie. Frank didn't make the drop. Instead, he parked across the road with binoculars, watching. At exactly noon, a young man, maybe 25, pulled up in a beat-up Honda. He retrieved the bag that wasn't there, looked confused, made a phone call. 10 minutes later, Eugene himself arrived in a black Cadillac. Frank's phone rang. "Mr. Morrison." Eugene's voice was cold. "You seem to have forgotten something." "I haven't forgotten anything. I'm just not paying." "That's a mistake. A serious mistake." "Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Your truck is currently parked at your home in Albuquerque. Blue Freightliner, license plate XRM 4521. Be a shame if something happened to it while you're away." Frank's blood ran cold. He was 200 miles from home. If they torched his truck, he'd lose everything. "Additionally," Eugene continued, "Opal's grandson has a chemistry exam tomorrow. Room 205, Hayden Hall. Accidents happen in chemistry labs all the time. You touch that kid? Then pay what you owe. With interest now. $1,000. Same location tomorrow, same time." The line went dead. Frank immediately called Tank. "They're threatening to destroy my truck and hurt Opal's grandson." "Your truck's fine," Tank said calmly. "I've got a friend watching it. As for the kid, I've already got someone at ASU keeping an eye on him. Eugene's making threats he can't follow through on." "How do you know?" "Because I've been tracking his people. He's got 12 guys total, but only 4 are actually dangerous. The rest are just local thugs he hired for show. Right now, 2 of his real muscle are in Flagstaff. One's in Amarillo, and one's with him. He's spread thin." "So what do we do?" "We use that against him. But first, I need you to do something that's going to seem crazy." "What?" "Make the payment tomorrow." "Are you insane?" "Trust me. Make the payment, but mark the bills. I need to know where that money goes." Frank didn't like it, but he trusted Tank. The next day, he withdrew $1,000, carefully marking each bill with a tiny dot of UV reactive ink that Tank had given him. He made the drop, watched the same young man pick it up. Tank followed the money. It went first to the storage unit Eugene had mentioned, then to a warehouse on the outskirts of Albuquerque. Tank surveilled the warehouse for 2 days, documenting everyone who came and went. "It's a counting house," Tank told Frank. "They're running protection rackets at 8 truck stops along Route 66, probably pulling in 50 grand a week. 50 grand a week. Conservative estimate. But here's the interesting part. Eugene's not depositing all of it. He's skimming. Skimming from organized crime? That's suicide. It is if they find out. Which gives us leverage. Tank's plan was elegant in its simplicity. They wouldn't fight Eugene. They'd let his own organization do it for them. It started with an anonymous package sent to the Sunset Motel, addressed to Eugene. Inside were photos. Eugene at the counting house, Eugene at his private safety deposit box, Eugene depositing money that should have gone to his bosses. The note was simple. The judge knows. The effect was immediate. Eugene panicked. He called all his guys back to the Desert Rose, fortifying his position. But that left the other truck stops unprotected, and drivers started noticing. Word spread on the CB channels. The protection racket at the Flying J was gone. Love's was clear. The independent near Needles was safe again. Eugene tried to maintain control at the Desert Rose, but fear made him sloppy. He started accusing his own men of being rats, created paranoia in his ranks. 2 of his guys quit, disappeared in the night. That's when Tank made his second move. Frank was at the Desert Rose, having dinner in the diner, when Eugene stormed in with 2 of his remaining thugs. Eugene's face was haggard, his expensive suit wrinkled. He hadn't slept in days. "You," he said, pointing at Frank. "You did this." "Did what?" Frank asked innocently. "I've just been eating Opal's excellent meatloaf." "Don't play games. I know you're behind this." "Behind what?" "You seem upset, Eugene. Problems at work?" Eugene pulled out a gun, pointed it at Frank. The diner went silent. Opal gasped from behind the counter. "Eugene," one of his thugs said nervously. "Not here. Too many witnesses." "Shut up." Eugene's hand was shaking. "Morrison, you're going to tell me who you're working with." "I'm an independent owner-operator," Frank said calmly. "I work alone." That's when the door opened and Tank walked in. He moved with the casual confidence of someone who'd been in 100 situations like this. 6'5", 300 pounds, wearing a leather jacket that had seen better days. He looked at Eugene's gun like it was a toy. "Evening, folks," Tank said pleasantly. "Don't mind me, just here for the pie. Opal, you got any of that apple left?" "Tank Jefferson," Eugene said, his voice cracking slightly. "I should have known." "Eugene Caldwell," Tank replied, taking a seat at the counter, his back to Eugene. "Heard you've been having some trouble. Something about missing money? You sent those photos." "What photos?" Tank turned around, his expression innocent. "I've been in Oklahoma all week. Check the truck stop cameras if you don't believe me. Time stamped and everything." Eugene's gun wavered. "Then who? Could be anyone. A lot of people unhappy with you lately. Your own guys, maybe. Or perhaps someone higher up the food chain found out about your little side business. You know, that safety deposit box at First National? The one you visit every Friday after collections?" Eugene went pale. "How do you—" "I don't know anything, but somebody does. Somebody who's probably already reported to the judge." Eugene's phone rang. He looked at it like it was a snake. It rang again. On the third ring, with shaking hands, he answered. "Yes. Yes, sir. I understand. No, sir, there's no missing money. I can explain." His face grew paler with each word. When he hung up, he looked like he'd aged 10 years. "I have to go," he said to his thugs. "Chicago, tonight." "Boss, what about—" "Forget Morrison. Forget all of this. We're done here." They left quickly, Eugene almost running to his Cadillac. Tank turned back to his pie, taking a satisfied bite. "Think he'll be back?" Frank asked. "Eugene? No. The judge doesn't like employees who skim. Eugene's probably heading for Mexico if he's smart. A shallow grave if he's not. And his crew? Rats, fleeing a sinking ship. They'll scatter, find other work, other towns. The Desert Rose is free, Frank looked at Opal, who was crying with relief. Just like that? Just like that? Sometimes you don't need violence. Sometimes you just need to know which dominoes to push. But it wasn't quite over. 3 days later, Frank was back on the road, hauling a load of construction equipment to Los Angeles. He'd stopped at the Desert Rose, now back to normal, full of truckers, and was heading west when he noticed the tail. A black SUV, staying exactly 3 cars behind him. Professional surveillance. Frank called Tank. "I've got company." "The judge's people," Tank said. "They're checking to see if you were involved in Eugene's skimming." "Was I?" "Of course not. You're just a trucker who refused to pay protection. That's not a crime in their world. It's expected. So why follow me?" "Due diligence. They'll watch you for a few days, confirm you're nobody special, then move on." But the SUV didn't move on. It followed Frank all the way to Los Angeles, then back toward Albuquerque. At a rest stop near Barstow, Frank had had enough. He parked, walked back to the SUV, knocked on the window. It rolled down to reveal a woman, maybe 40, professional-looking in a business suit. "Can I help you?" she asked, as if she hadn't been following him for 500 miles. "You've been tailing me since New Mexico. Either arrest me or leave me alone." She smiled. "Mr. Morrison, I'm not police. I represent certain interests that were affected by recent events at the Desert Rose." "The judge?" "Among others. We're trying to determine if you were simply a victim of Eugene's unauthorized operation, or if you were something more." "I'm a trucker, that's all." "A trucker who somehow caused Eugene Caldwell to abandon a profitable operation and flee the country." "I didn't cause anything. Eugene got greedy, got caught. That's on him." The woman studied him. "Tank Jefferson. He helped you." It wasn't a question, but Frank answered anyway. "Tank's an old friend. He gave me advice about dealing with bullies." "Advice?" "Legal advice. Nothing more." "Mr. Morrison, let me be clear. My employers have no issue with you. Eugene was a problem, and now he's not. But if you were to cause other problems, if you were to interfere with other operations, I just want to drive my truck in peace. Then we understand each other." She handed him a business card. It was blank except for a phone number. "If anyone else tries to extort you, call this number. We don't approve of freelancers." "You're offering me protection?" "We're offering you professional courtesy. Eugene gave our organization a bad name. We're cleaning house." The window rolled up, and the SUV pulled away. Frank stood there, holding the card, wondering if he'd just made a deal with the devil. When he got home, Tank was waiting in his driveway. "Got a visit from the judge's people?" Tank asked. "Yeah. They gave me a card. Said to call if I have trouble." "You going to?" "Hell no. I want nothing to do with any of them." Tank nodded approvingly. "Smart man, but keep the card anyway. Sometimes the threat of making that call is enough to keep the small-time crooks away." "Is it over? Really over?" "For now. The Desert Rose is safe. Opal's grandson is fine. Your route is clear. But Frank, this is Route 66. There's always going to be someone trying to take advantage. The trick is being ready for them." Frank thought about that as Tank drove away. He'd won this round, but at what cost? He'd made enemies, made deals, crossed lines he'd never thought he'd cross. The simple trucker who just wanted to haul freight in peace was gone, replaced by someone harder, more cynical. A week later, Frank stopped at the Desert Rose again. The parking lot was full, truckers coming and going like the old days. Inside the diner, Opal greeted him with a genuine smile for the first time in months. "The usual, Frank?" "You know it." As she poured his coffee, she leaned in close. "Thank you for everything." "I didn't do anything." "No, you did everything. You stood up when everyone else was too scared. You fought back. I had help. But you made the choice to fight. That's what matters." Frank thought about Eugene, probably hiding somewhere in Mexico if he was lucky. He thought about the judge's organization, still out there, still running their rackets, just not here. He thought about Tank, who'd appeared exactly when needed and disappeared just as quickly. "Opal, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Your husband, the one who drove with Tank back in the day. What happened to him?" Opal's expression grew sad. "He stood up to some bad people. Refused to haul drugs in his truck. They killed him for it. I'm sorry. It was 20 years ago, but Tank never forgot. When he heard I was in trouble, he came to help, just like he helped you. Tank's got a lot of ghosts. Don't we all?" Frank finished his meal, left his usual tip plus extra. As he walked back to his truck, he saw a new driver, young kid probably fresh out of driving school, looking nervous as he fueled up. "First time at the Desert Rose?" Frank asked. "Yes, sir. Is it safe?" Frank looked around at the busy lot, the normal activity, the absence of men in expensive suits demanding payment. "Yeah, kid, it's safe, for now." "For now?" "Nothing's permanent out here, but today, tonight, this week, you're good. Get some food, get some rest. The road will still be there in the morning." The kid nodded, looking relieved. Frank climbed into his cab, started his engine. He had a load to deliver, miles to cover. The road stretched out before him, dark and full of possibility. 2 months passed. The Desert Rose returned to normal, truckers stopping without fear, Opal serving coffee without looking over her shoulder. Frank ran his routes, Dallas to Los Angeles and back, trying to forget about Eugene and the judge and all of it. Then the murders started. The first victim was a trucker named Dale Hutchins, found dead in his cab at a rest stop 30 miles from the Desert Rose. Single gunshot to the head, execution style. His load, electronics worth $500,000, was untouched. The second was Maria Gonzalez, the young woman who'd helped Frank swap trailers months earlier. Found at the bottom of a ravine, her truck burned. The investigators called it an accident. The trucking community knew better. The third was Tommy Chen, killed at a way station near Flagstaff. Again, execution style. Again, his valuable load untouched. Frank got the call from Tank while he was in Los Angeles. "You seeing the pattern?" Tank asked. "They're all people who stood up to Eugene's racket. People who refused to pay. Which means you're on the list." "Why now? Why wait 2 months?" "Because the judge's organization just got taken over. New management. And the new boss wants to send a message. Nobody defies them and lives." Frank felt the old fear creeping back. Who's the new boss? Nobody knows. But whoever it is, they're cleaning the slate. Everyone who embarrassed the organization, everyone who cost them money. You're probably next. So what do I do? Run? Hide? Neither. Running makes you look guilty. Hiding just delays the inevitable. No, you need to make yourself too valuable to kill. How? I'm working on that. In the meantime, vary your routes. Don't stop at the same places. And Frank? Carry a gun. Frank already was, a 357 Smith & Wesson, loaded and within reach at all times. But a gun hadn't helped Dale or Maria or Tommy. 3 nights later, Frank was approaching the Desert Rose when he saw the roadblock. 2 semi-trucks parked across the highway, no lights, nearly invisible in the darkness. He slammed on the brakes, jackknifed slightly, came to a stop 50 feet from the blockade. Men emerged from the darkness. 4 of them, all armed. One stepped forward, and Frank recognized him. One of Eugene's former thugs, a man called Dwight. "Mr. Morrison," Dwight called out. "Please step out of the vehicle." Frank's hand went to his gun, but he knew it was useless. 4 against 1, and they had the drop on him. He climbed down from the cab, hands visible but ready to move if he got the chance. "Dwight," Frank said, "thought you disappeared with Eugene." "Eugene's dead," Dwight said matter-of-factly. Found him in a motel in Juarez. Took them 3 days to identify the body, he was so cut up. And you're what, back in business? Under new management. The judge is gone too. Heart attack, they say, though I heard it was poison. New boss wants things run differently. Let me guess. Starting with killing everyone who stood up to Eugene. You were given multiple chances to pay. You refused. Actions have consequences. So you're just going to shoot me here on the highway? No. You're going to have an accident. Fell asleep at the wheel, ran off the road. Tragic, but common. Happens all the time on these long hauls. They were going to stage his death, make it look natural. No investigation, no questions. Just another trucker who pushed too hard for too long. Before you do this, Frank said, can I ask who ordered it? Who's the new boss? Dwight smiled. You already know her. Her. Frank's mind raced. Then it clicked, and his blood went cold. The professional woman in the black SUV, the one who'd given him the business card, offered him professional courtesy. She hadn't been representing the judge. She'd been positioning herself to take over. She played everyone, Frank said. Eugene, the judge, me. Brilliant, isn't it? Let Eugene's incompetence expose the weak points in the organization. Let you and Tank clean up the mess. Then step in when everyone's guard is down. And now she's cleaning house. Nothing personal, Morrison, just business. That's when the shooting started. But not at Frank. The men around Dwight started dropping, muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness from multiple directions. Dwight spun around, confused, then took a bullet in the shoulder that knocked him to the ground. Within seconds, it was over. All 4 men were down, dead or dying. Frank stood there, stunned, as figures emerged from the darkness. It was Tank, along with 3 other men Frank didn't recognize, all armed, all wearing tactical gear. You okay? Tank asked. Yeah. How did you? Been following you for 2 days. Figured they'd make their move soon. Who are these guys? Friends. Other truckers who've had enough of this shit. We formed a kind of mutual protection society. One of the men was checking the bodies. Dwight's still alive. Tank walked over to where Dwight was lying, bleeding from his shoulder. Hello, Dwight. Remember me? Tank, Dwight gasped. You don't know who you're messing with. She'll kill you all. She can try. But first you're going to deliver a message. Tank hauled Dwight to his feet, walked him to one of the blocked semis. He zip-tied Dwight to the steering wheel, then pulled out Dwight's phone. Call her, Tank ordered. I can't. Tank pressed his gun against Dwight's knee. Call her, or you'll never walk again. Dwight, crying now, dialed a number. Tank put it on speaker. Is it done? The woman's voice, calm and professional. It's not Dwight, Tank said. This is Tank Jefferson. Morrison's under my protection, along with every other trucker on Route 66. Your killing spree ends now. A pause. Mr. Jefferson, I've heard about you. Ex-military, ex-cop, a lot of things. You think you can protect every trucker on this highway? I don't have to. I just have to make it more expensive for you to kill them than to leave them alone. You killed 4 of my men, and I'll kill 40 more if I have to. But here's the thing. You're a businesswoman. This isn't about revenge for you. It's about power, money, control. Dead truckers don't pay protection. Scared truckers do. But truckers who fight back, they're bad for business. What are you proposing? A truce. You leave the independents alone. No more protection rackets at truck stops. No more murders. In exchange, we don't burn your entire operation to the ground. You're bluffing. You don't have that kind of power. Don't I? I've got 30 ex-military truckers ready to move. We know where your counting houses are, where you store your product, where your people sleep. One word from me, and your entire Route 66 operation disappears in flames. Another pause, longer this time. I'll consider it, but Frank Morrison is off limits. Forever. Him, Opal, every trucker who stood up to Eugene. They're under protection. That's a lot of protection for one man to guarantee. Good thing I'm not just one man. The line went dead. Tank cut Dwight loose, let him slump to the ground. You're going to live, Dwight, but you're done on Route 66. I see you again. You won't get another warning. Dwight nodded frantically, clutching his wounded shoulder. Tank's men moved the blocking trucks, clearing the highway. As they worked, Tank explained the situation to Frank. After the murder started, I made some calls. Turns out a lot of us old-timers are tired of being victims, so we organized. Nothing official, nothing that could be prosecuted as a conspiracy. Just truckers looking out for truckers. Like a union? Like a militia. We can't stop all the crime, but we can make it costly. That woman, whoever she is, she's smart. She'll do the math, realize it's not worth the fight. And if she doesn't? Then things get ugly. But I don't think it'll come to that. She's a businesswoman, not a warlord. She'll adapt, find other revenue streams. They drove in convoy to the Desert Rose, where Opal had coffee waiting despite it being 3 in the morning. Word had already spread on the CB channels. There had been a confrontation. Tank's people had won. The truckers were fighting back. As the sun rose over the desert, Frank sat in his usual booth, exhausted but alive. Tank sat across from him, looking tired but satisfied. Is it really over? Frank asked. This round is, but there'll be other rounds, other threats. The road's always been dangerous, always will be. So what do? We stay ready. We look out for each other. We don't let them isolate us, pick us off one by one. Frank thought about Dale, Maria, Tommy, good people who'd died just for refusing to be victims. Those 3 who were killed, their families. We're taking care of it. Collection going around, money for funerals, support for the kids. Truckers take care of their own. Opal brought over fresh coffee, her hand briefly touching Frank's shoulder, a gesture of gratitude, of solidarity. Tank, she said, there's something you should know. The woman who took over from the judge. I've seen her before. Both men looked at her. It was about a year ago, Opal continued. She stopped here, just another traveler, or so I thought, but she asked a lot of questions about the truckers, the routes, who owned what. I thought she was maybe a reporter or something. She was scouting, Tank said. Planning this for a year, maybe more. There's more, Opal said. She left a card, said she was in logistics, looking for shipping partners. She went behind the counter, pulled out a business card holder, rifled through it. Here. The card read, Victoria Cross, Logistics Solutions. There was a phone number, an email, a professional-looking logo. Tank pulled out his phone, did a quick search. Victoria Cross doesn't exist. The company's fake. The number's probably a burner. But now we have a name, fake or not. What good does that do us? Frank asked. Information is ammunition. The more we know about her, the better we can protect ourselves. Over the next few weeks, Tank's network went to work. They tracked Victoria Cross's movements, her operations, her people. She was smart, careful, but not invisible. She had patterns, habits, weaknesses. She also had ambition. The Route 66 trucking racket was just the beginning. She was building something bigger, a nationwide network targeting the transportation industry. Protection rackets, cargo theft, driver intimidation. If she succeeded, no trucker in America would be safe. Tank called a meeting. Not just his military friends, but regular truckers, owner-operators, even some company drivers. They met at an abandoned warehouse outside Albuquerque, 40 men and women who'd decided enough was enough. We can't rely on law enforcement, Tank said. They're either bought, incompetent, or overwhelmed. We have to protect ourselves. What are you suggesting? Someone asked. We become vigilantes? I'm suggesting we become organized. Share information, coordinate routes, provide mutual support. Someone gets threatened, we all respond. Someone gets attacked, we all retaliate. That's illegal, another driver pointed out. So is extortion and murder, but that hasn't stopped them. Look, I'm not saying we become criminals. I'm saying we become dangerous enough that criminals think twice. Frank stood up. Tank's right. They count on us being isolated, scared, alone. But we're not alone. There are thousands of us on these highways. If we stand together, they can't beat us. And if they come after our families? A woman asked. Our homes? Then we come after theirs, Tank said grimly. Victoria Cross has a weakness. She thinks like a CEO, not a soldier. She doesn't understand that some fights aren't about profit and loss. They're about survival. The vote was unanimous. The Brotherhood of the Highway was born that night. Not a union, not a gang, but something in between. Truckers who decided that the road belonged to them, not to parasites like Victoria Cross. Within a month, the effects were visible. Protection rackets started failing as truckers refused en masse to pay. Cargo thieves found themselves surrounded by multiple trucks, boxed in until police arrived. Information flowed freely on the CB channels, warnings about dangerous areas, descriptions of suspicious vehicles, names and faces of known criminals. Victoria Cross tried to push back. More violence, more threats. But for every trucker she intimidated, 3 more joined the Brotherhood. For every load she stole, the Brotherhood tracked down and recovered 2. The tipping point came in November. When Victoria Cross made her biggest mistake. She kidnapped Opal. Frank got the call at 4 a.m. while he was sleeping in his cab at a rest stop near Flagstaff. It was Martinez, the Desert Rose owner, and he was crying. They took her, Frank, right out of the diner. 4 men, guns, grabbed her during the dinner rush, left this. Left what? A note, for you. Frank was already starting his engine. What does it say? Morrison, you cost me $3 million. Now I'm taking something you value. Want her back? Come alone to the old Riverside warehouse. Midnight tomorrow. Bring nobody, tell nobody, or she dies. Frank's hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles went white. Did you call the police? They said to. In the note. Said if I don't call the police, make it official, they'll know I'm helping you. Smart. Victoria was forcing everything into the open, making it official. If the police were involved, the Brotherhood couldn't act without becoming criminals themselves. Frank called Tank immediately. They're baiting you, Tank said. They know you'll come, know you'll bring backup. It's a trap. I don't care. It's Opal. Which is exactly why they took her. Frank, you go to that warehouse, you're not coming back. Then I don't come back. But I'm going. There was a long pause. Then Tank said, Not alone, you're not. The note said, I don't give a damn what the note said. Victoria Cross declared war when she took Opal. She just doesn't know it yet. Tank mobilized the Brotherhood. Within hours, 40 truckers had converged on Albuquerque. Not to attack. That would get Opal killed. But to prepare. The Riverside warehouse was in an industrial district that had seen better days. Half the buildings were abandoned. The other half housed questionable businesses that operated mostly at night. It was the perfect place for Victoria's kind of operation. Isolated, defensible, forgotten by the legitimate world. Tank sent scouts. They reported back with bad news. She's got at least 20 guys there, one scout said. Professional security, not street thugs. Multiple vehicles, multiple exit routes. And Frank, they've got Opal in a cage, like an animal, right in the middle of the warehouse where everyone can see. Frank felt rage building in his chest. A cage. They'd put her in a cage. "There's more," the scout continued. "Victoria's there personally. First time anyone's actually seen her at an operation." "She wants to watch," Tank said grimly. "This is personal for her now." Frank spent the day preparing. He wrote a letter to his daughter, just in case. He loaded his gun, chambered a round. He thought about all the miles he'd driven, all the loads he'd delivered, and how it had all led to this moment. At 11 p.m., he drove toward the warehouse, alone as instructed. But Tank's people were already in position, hidden in the surrounding buildings, ready to move if needed. Frank parked outside the warehouse, walked through the open loading dock door. The inside was lit by industrial lights, casting harsh shadows. And there, in the center of the space, was a large dog cage with Opal inside. She was sitting on the floor of the cage, still in her waitress uniform, looking terrified but unharmed. When she saw Frank, she started to cry. "I'm sorry, Frank. I'm so sorry." "It's not your fault," Frank said, moving toward her. "That's far enough." Victoria Cross stepped out of the shadows. She was exactly as Frank remembered. Professional, composed, looking like she should be running a Fortune 500 company, not a criminal empire. "Mr. Morrison, so good of you to come. Let her go. Your problem is with me, not her. My problem is with what you represent. Resistance, defiance, the belief that truckers can stand against us." Victoria walked closer, her heels clicking on the concrete floor. "Do you know how much your little brotherhood has cost me?" "Don't know, don't care. $3 million in 3 months, protection payments refused, operations disrupted, personnel arrested. You've become bad for business." "Good." Victoria smiled. "You think you're a hero, don't you? The noble trucker standing up to the big bad criminals. But you're just another small man who doesn't understand how the world really works." "I understand enough. You're a parasite. You produce nothing, contribute nothing. You just take from people who actually work for a living. I provide order, structure. Without operations like mine, this industry would be chaos. It was fine before you came along." "Was it? How many truckers got robbed before I organized things? How many loads stolen? I brought professionalism to crime. You brought murder. I brought consequences. Dale, Maria, Tommy, they knew the rules and chose to break them. And now you've taken Opal, an innocent woman. Nobody's innocent. She served you coffee, listened to your plans, helped you resist. That makes her complicit." Frank took a step forward. Immediately, men with guns emerged from hidden positions. 10, 15, 20, all aimed at him. "Here's what's going to happen," Victoria said. "You're going to die tonight. Slowly, painfully, while Opal watches. Then she's going to go back to the Desert Rose and tell everyone what happens to people who resist. The Brotherhood will dissolve, the protection payments will resume, and order will be restored. That's your plan? That's my promise." Frank laughed. Actually laughed. Victoria's composed expression cracked slightly. "What's funny? You think killing me will end the Brotherhood? Lady, I'm just one trucker. There are thousands of us. You kill me, 10 more take my place. You kill them, 100 more rise up. You can't win this." "I can try." "No, you really can't." Frank pulled out his phone. "Want to know why?" Before Victoria could respond, Frank hit send on a message he'd already composed. Within seconds, the air outside filled with the sound of air horns, dozens of them from every direction. Victoria's men looked around nervously. The air horns kept blaring, getting closer. "What did you do?" Victoria demanded. "I told the Brotherhood where I was, and they came. All of them." Through the windows, headlights appeared. Truck after truck, surrounding the warehouse. 40 big rigs, engines running, air horns blasting. The entire building shook from the sound. "They're not attacking," Frank said over the noise. "They're witnessing. Everything that happens here tonight, 40 truckers are watching, recording, broadcasting live on social media." Victoria's composure finally cracked. "They're interfering with a crime scene. I'll have them all arrested." "For what? Parking? Honking horns? They're not breaking any laws." Tank's voice boomed over a PA system. "Victoria Cross, we know you're in there. We know you have Opal Hutchinson. The FBI has been notified. The media has been notified. The whole world is watching." It was a bluff about the FBI, but Victoria didn't know that. She looked at her men, saw doubt in their faces. This wasn't what they'd signed up for. A quiet execution in an abandoned warehouse was one thing. A public spectacle with dozens of witnesses was another. "Kill him," Victoria ordered. Nobody moved. "I said kill him!" "Ma'am," one of her security guys said, "there's 40 trucks out there. If we shoot him, they'll ram this building. We'll all die." "They won't." The building shook as a truck bumped against the wall. Not hard enough to breach, but hard enough to make a point. Tank's voice again. "Let Opal go! Let Frank go, or we come in!" Victoria pulled out her own gun, pointed it at Frank. "I'll do it myself." "Go ahead," Frank said. "Make me a martyr. See how that works out for your business model." Victoria's hand shook. For the first time since this all started, she looked afraid. Not of Frank, but of what he represented. The collective power of people who'd had enough. Then came the sirens. Real ones this time. Police. Lots of them. "You called the cops?" Victoria said. "I didn't have to. 40 truckers surrounding a warehouse, live streaming everything? Someone was bound to notice." Victoria lowered her gun. She was trapped and she knew it. Kill Frank and Opal now and there'd be 40 witnesses plus video evidence. Try to fight her way out and she'd run straight into the police. "This isn't over," she said. "Yes, it is." Frank walked to the cage, ignoring the guns still pointed at him. He knelt beside it, looked at Opal. "You okay?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Where's the key?" Frank asked Victoria. She threw it at his feet. Frank unlocked the cage, helped Opal out. She collapsed against him, sobbing. The police burst in moments later. They arrested everyone, including Frank. But with 40 witnesses all telling the same story, with video evidence of Opal in a cage, with Victoria caught red-handed, the charges against Frank were quickly dropped. Victoria Cross, whose real name turned out to be Patricia Kellerman, a former corporate executive who'd turned to crime after being fired for embezzlement, was charged with kidnapping, extortion, conspiracy, and multiple counts of murder. Her organization crumbled within days. Some of her people fled, others turned state's evidence, most simply disappeared into the wind. The Desert Rose returned to normal once again, but this time it was different. The truckers who'd responded to Frank's call had formed bonds that wouldn't break. The Brotherhood of the Highway became something more than just mutual protection. It became a community. They set up a fund for truckers in trouble. They established a network of safe stops where drivers could rest without fear. They created an information system that warned of dangers, recommended routes, identified threats before they became serious. Frank kept driving. He was something of a legend now, the trucker who'd stood up to organized crime and won. But he didn't feel like a hero. He felt tired. The confrontation with Victoria had taken something out of him, shown him how dark the world could be. One night, 6 months later, he was having dinner at the Desert Rose when Opal sat down across from him. "You saved my life," she said. "Tank saved both our lives." "Tank brought the cavalry. You walked into that warehouse knowing you might not walk out." "It was the right thing to do." Opal reached across the table, took his hand. "I never thanked you properly." "You don't need to." "Frank, I'm retiring. selling my house, moving to Florida where my sister lives, somewhere quiet, safe, somewhere I don't have to look over my shoulder. Frank understood. The desert rose would never be the same for her. Too many bad memories. "I want you to come with me," she said. Frank looked at her, surprised. "Opal?" "We're not young anymore, Frank. We've both seen too much, been through too much. Maybe it's time to stop fighting and start living." Frank thought about it. Really thought about it. The road had been his life for 3 decades. But what had it given him besides money and miles? A failed marriage, a daughter he barely saw, and more enemies than friends. "I've got a run to finish," he said. "Furniture to Dallas. But after that, maybe Florida sounds nice." Opal smiled, squeezed his hand. Frank made his last run 2 weeks later. Dallas to Los Angeles back to Albuquerque. He stopped at every major truck stop along Route 66, saying goodbye to people he'd known for years. The word had spread. Frank Morrison was hanging up his keys. At the Flying J near Amarillo, a young driver approached him. "You're Frank Morrison? The Frank Morrison?" "Just Frank. You're the guy who stood up to the protection racket, who started the Brotherhood." "I was just one of many. My dad was Dale Hutchins. They killed him for refusing to pay." Frank's heart sank. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. You got justice for him. You stopped them. My dad would have been proud." The kid shook Frank's hand, walked away. Frank stood there for a moment, thinking about Dale, Maria, Tommy, all the people who died just for wanting to make an honest living. His last stop was the Desert Rose. Tank was there, along with 20 other Brotherhood members. They'd thrown him a retirement party. There was cake, bad coffee, and war stories that got more elaborate with each telling. "So what now?" Tank asked. "Fishing? Golf? Sitting on a porch complaining about young people?" "Florida. With Opal." Tank raised an eyebrow. "No kidding? Good for you, brother. You've earned it. What about you?" "Someone's got to keep the Brotherhood running. Keep the wolves at bay. It's what I'm good at." They shook hands, 2 old warriors who'd fought the good fight. As Frank drove away from the Desert Rose for the last time, he looked in his mirrors at the highway stretching behind him. Route 66 had been his life, his livelihood, his battlefield. It had tested him, nearly broken him, but ultimately shown him what he was made of. The road would go on without him. Other truckers would face other challenges. But maybe, thanks to the Brotherhood, they'd face them together instead of alone. Frank pointed his pickup truck east, toward Florida, toward Opal, toward a different kind of life. The sun was setting behind him, painting the desert in shades of gold and red. It was beautiful, he realized. Despite everything, it was still beautiful. His phone rang. It was his daughter, Sarah. "Dad, I heard you're retiring. News travels fast. I'm proud of you. For everything. The stand you took. The people you helped." "I just did what needed doing." "No, Dad. You did what was right. Even when it was dangerous. That's heroism." After they hung up, Frank drove in silence for a while. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe there was something heroic in standing up to bullies, in protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. Or maybe he was just a trucker who'd gotten lucky. Either way, his war was over. He'd fought it, won it, survived it. Now it was time to see what peace looked like. But as he crossed into Texas, Frank made himself a promise. If the Brotherhood ever truly needed him, if another Victoria Cross rose up, if truckers were threatened again, he'd come back. Because once you'd driven Route 66, once you'd been part of that community, you never really left. The road was in his blood. It always would be. But for now, Florida was calling, and Opal was waiting. And maybe that was enough.
maybe that was more than enough. The highway stretched on into the darkness, endless and eternal. Somewhere out there, truckers were driving through the night, delivering their loads, watching their mirrors, trusting in the brotherhood to keep them safe. Frank smiled, pressed the accelerator, and drove toward his future, leaving Route 66 to its ghosts and guardians.